بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين. السيدات والسادة الحضور الكرام، كل باسمه وصفته. السيدات والسادة الكرام الذين يتابعوننا مباشرة عبر منصة زوم، سعيد أن أرحب بكم في هذا اليوم الدراسي الذي ينظم في إطار شراكة بين فرع جمعية أساتذة اللغة الإنجليزية بالمغرب بجهة الدار البيضاء سقاط مع الأكاديمية الجهوية للتربية والتكوين لجهة الدار البيضاء سقاط، جامعة شعيب كالي وجامعة الحسن الثاني، حول موضوع تطوير مهارات تدريس اللغة الإنجليزية بين التعليم الحضوري والتعليم عن بعد. Teachers Renewable Toolbox and Lifelong Career. والكلمة الافتتاحية للسيد معزة الدوز، رئيس قسم الشؤون التربوية بالأكاديمية الجهوية للتربية والتكوين لجهة الدار البيضاء سقاط، نيابة عن السيد مدير الأكاديمية، فليتفضل مشكورا.
السلام عليكم، شكرا للسيد المدير. السيد رئيس جمعية أساتذة اللغة الإنجليزية في المغرب، السيدة رئيس الفرع الجهوي للدار البيضاء سقاط، السيد يعقوب محمد أستاذ جامعة شعيب الكالي، السيد فضيل إدريس كذلك بجامعة شعيب الكالي، السيد يوسف منير جامعة الحسن الثاني أستاذ كذلك، اليوم يكونوا مؤثرين لهذه الدورة. السيدات والسادة الأساتذة، السيدات والسادة أعضاء الجمعية، السيدة رئيسة المركز الجهوي، السيدة رئيسة مصلحة اتصال الأكاديمية، أيها الحضور الكريم. أولاً تقدم لكم اعتذار السيد المدير الأكاديمية اللي كان تيرغب أنه يحضر هذه الانطلاقة ديال اليوم ديال هذا اليوم الدراسي، وذلك ولأسباب الالتزامات الأخرى التي منعته من الحضور، وترحب بكم جميعا وتتمنى أن نلقاكم في فرصة أخرى إن شاء الله. هذا اللقاء اللي هو تيجي في إطار برنامج العمل الجهوي ديال الأكاديمية اللي تيروم إلى تنزيل مشاريع القانون والإطار اللي جا به الإصلاح اللي جا من أجل إصلاح منظومة التربية والتكوين، وخصوصا في إطار تنزيل مشروع تطوير النموذج البيداغوجي وتعزيز الذي يهدف إلى تعزيز تدريس اللغات الأجنبية واللغات الوطنية، بالإضافة إلى مشروع 15 الذي يهدف إلى التعبئة حول المدرسة المغربية والشرعية. السيد مدير الأكاديمية قد كلفني بتلاوة رسالة الافتتاح أو كلمة الافتتاح، ولكنها باللغة الإنجليزية. ما غاديش نجازف، كنعرفوا شوية الإنجليزية ولكن ما غاديش نجازف مع السادة الأساتذة اللي حاضرين هنايا، لكون أنني درست الإنجليزية منذ قرون منذ مدة. اسمحوا لي أنا نتكلم معكم باللغة العربية وغادي نوزع عليكم الكلمة ديال السيد المدير. هذا شرف لي أنني نحضر معكم كنخبة من الأساتذة اللي تدرسوا اللغة الإنجليزية اللي خدوا على عاتقهم يعني تدريس لوليداتنا اللغة الإنجليزية. وانتم تعرفون الأهمية ديال اللغات الأجنبية في التدريس، لا شك فيه أن يعني المسألة اللغوية خدات واحد اهميه كبيره في السنوات الاخيره. اذا هنايا بعد الدراسات اللي كانت فيها مجموعه من المنظمات ومجموعه من مجموعه من الدراسات اللي كانت فيها المجلس الاعلى للتعليم، نتابعوا الى ان اللغه الاجنبيه خصوصا اللغه الفرنسيه واللغه الانجليزيه يعني تلعب دور كبير في يعني انجاح المسار الدراسي والمسار الجامعي ديال الوليدات ديالنا. دونك جا مشروع منفرد، هذا المشروع في اطار قانون الاطار منفرد لتعزيز اللغات الاجنبيه والوطنيه. هناك اهتمام باللغات الوطنيه وكذلك اهتمام باللغات الاجنبيه، ومن اهمها اللغه الانجليزيه. هنا في الاكاديميه منفتحين على مجموعه من الشركاء من اجل يعني تطوير تدريس اللغات الاجنبيه وخصوصا اللغه الانجليزيه. عقدنا مجموعه من الشراكات، واليوم حنا بصدد تصريف برنامج طموح بيننا وبين هذه الجمعيه الفرع الجهوي اللي هو فرع ديال اساتذه اللغات الانجليزيه، اللي يواكبونا في رفع القدرات اللغويه للاساتذه، اللي المنتظر منه انه يكون عنده واحد الاثر ايجابي على التعلمات ديال اللغه الانجليزيه بالنسبه للوليدات. اكيد انتم تعرفوا كلكم عشتوا هذه السنه الاخيره يعني لا بانديمي كوفيد اللي فرضت علينا واحد النوع من يعني واحد النوع من النمط ديال التدريس اللي هو مبني على التناوب. التدريس يعني كان في البدايه مفروض ان نامنوا الاستمراريه البيداغوجيه. هذا اللقاء الدراسي هذا كله يعني من الطرائق ومن يعني لي فاسون دو فير باش نديروا تعليم عن بعد جيد. تعليم عن بعد راه كان خاص جميع المواد ومن بينها اللغه الانجليزيه. الاكاديميه الصعيد الاكاديميه لنا مجهود كبير في هذا الاطار، حيث اننا زدنا من التعليم الحضوري بين ليله وضحاها قريبه منا الهدوء عن بعد في ظل استفحال الجائحه ديال كوفيد. فكان لقينا جانبنا اساتذه عندهم غيره على الوطن وبداوا جهد كبير من اجل توفير هذه الخدمه عن بعد، خدمه التدريس عن بعد. وشاهدنا يعني استمرارات ديال الجميع، بالاضافه الى ان الاكاديميه حاولت بمجهودات يعني بمجهودات ذاتيه انها توفر انفراستركتير لهذا النوع من الدراسه، حيث تمت يعني تجهيز جميع المؤسسات بالربط بالشبكات الانترنت. تم كذلك الصعيد الجهوي انشاء حوالي 30 استوديو لتصوير الارشيفات، وفي ظرف وجيز استطعنا الصعيد الاكاديميه بفضل المجهودات ديال الاساتذه وبفضل المجهودات ديال السيدات الساده المفتشين بزاف شهور من هذا المنبر اننا نصوروا ما يقارب 5000 كرتون موجهه للتلفزه للقنوات التلفزية المغربيه من اجل تامين التعليم عن بعد عن طريق يعني التلفزيون ديال القنوات التلفزية. كذلك الموارد الرقميه اللي استثمرناها في فيزيت انترنت. هذا المجهود تشكر عليه السيدات والساده الاساتذه وكذلك الشركاء ديالنا اللي كانوا دعمونا بكل ما لديهم من قوه. ومن هذا المنبر ندعو الجميع للانخراط المستمر في هذا الورش ديال النهوض بتدريس اللغات، الورش ديال النهوض يعني النهوض بهذا النوع من التدريس اللي اصبح يشكل يعني النمط القادم. خاصنا نستثمروا في التعليم عن بعد لانه ابان عن ضروريه يعني المجد ما بين ما هو حضوري وما هو عن بعد. ما غنطولش عليكم، نتمنى لكم ان يكون هذا اليوم الدراسي مفيد لكم جميعا ومفيد للمعمرين لانه يتفرع التجارب اصعد المؤسسات التجارب للاخوه الاساتذه مؤسساتهم مع التلاميذ ديالهم. وشكرا للجميع والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله تعالى وبركاته.
شكرا جزيل الشكر للسيد معز الدوز رئيس قسم الشؤون التربويه بالأكاديمية الجهوية للتربية والتكوين لجهاز الدار البيضاء سطات على هذه الكلمة الافتتاحية، نيابة على السيد مدير الأكاديمية الجهوية للتربية والتكوين لجهاز الدار البيضاء سطات. And now we will shift to English. Thank you very much, dear attendees, either in this conference room, in the RF, or the attendees who are watching out, following the Zoom platform. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Mrs. Hanan Gibran, the president of Kazakhstan's team branch. Team stands for Teachers of English Association in Morocco. Mrs. Hanan Gibran, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Imam. Ladies and gentlemen, as the president of Kazakhstan team branch and on behalf of Team Nationwide, I would like to welcome our distinguished guests for this study day that we organized in partnership with the RF and highlight our goals and the strategy vision 2015-2030, especially the framework number 5117, section 8 and 17, related to the reform of the Moroccan educational system that gives much importance to the learning and mastery of foreign languages, and also talk about our achievements during the last 2 years. Well, TEAM stands for Teachers of English Association in Morocco, which has almost 16 branches all over Morocco, both in public and private sector. To achieve its goals, TEAM has adopted and legitimated legal mechanisms, including organizing seminars, presentations, trainings, awareness-raising activities, in addition to recreational, artistic, sporting, and cultural ones. Linking relationships of cooperation, coordination, and partnership with other agencies and government institutions and non-governmental organizations and associations that have the same goals nationally and internationally. Organizing voluntary workshops locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally as well. Exchanging experiences and promoting cross-cultural relations. Organizing, transporting, and participating in cultural and recreational trips inside and outside Morocco, as well as organizing summer language camps. Overseas trips. Before last year, TEAM had organized many cultural trips to London, where more than 500 students had the opportunity to visit different cultural and historical monuments through sightseeing. The students that are from different cities of Morocco visited the well-known universities of Cambridge and Oxford, in which they took part in various workshops and benefited from different Cambridge or Oxford attendance certificates. TEAM has signed a partnership with Purdue University for Twain in northern Indiana, USA, which gives the opportunity to our students to get a very advantageous scholarship to pursue their higher studies in different fields. Our teachers can also benefit from English, specialized scientific subjects training, as well as exchange trips. TEAM is enthusiastic to widen its relations with many other partners. We are looking forward to improving our cooperation with any institution or association that has the same goals. And thank you for your attention.
much, Mrs. Hanan Gibran, for briefing us about the rationale as well as the main objectives of the team association. Now, I yield the floor to Professor Muhammad Yaoub, who is representing Shuaib Kali, our partner for this study day. The floor is yours, Si Muhammad Yaoub.
Thank you, Mr. Iman. Very happy to be with you today. This is a wonderful event. I'm happy to meet friends and colleagues here, and I'd like to thank the organizing committee for this invitation. And I'd like to congratulate the team branch and the AREF, the Regional Academy for Education and Training, for organizing this study day. I'm sure this will be a very important opportunity for us to get connected and share experiences and concerns and get support, because this is very important for us as a teacher community to attend such events. Yes, it was last week, Tuesday, there was a webinar, I think organized by Teacher Classroom. Connecting Classrooms. Yes, that was a very important event where students and teachers from different countries shared concerns and experiences. So we need similar events, to organize similar events, either study days or webinars, for us as a teacher community to work together, to work closely with colleagues to address these shared concerns and to grow together. This is very important and vital aspect of academic community. The objective is to create long-standing relationships between university and community. Of course, we have the context of setting up partnerships, but the objective is that the relationship and the cooperation, collaboration should be long-standing. We need to create the conditions to encourage such collaboration between faculty members, between professors, teachers, and teacher educators. What can I say? Yeah, just a reminder that the AREF, the president of the AREF, is a full-time member of the University Council at the University of Shuaib Kali University. And by the way, the University of Shuaib Kali was, created in 1985. When I joined the university back in 1999, there were only two institutions: the Faculty of Letters, School of Letters, and School of Science. But today we have a number of institutions. We have the UNCG, we have the INSAP, the School of Applied Science, and we have the School of Technology and Civil Law. We have a new created institution which is a relevant one. It's the FF, the School of Education and Training, and it was just recently created 2019. We have a Department of English. We have now the second cohort, and it's just newly established, and so we this is an example where collaboration between regional branch association of teachers and the regional academy, where they collaborate in order to boost training and education at this institution. So I think that's what I can say at the moment. And thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be with you today.
Thank you very much, our Professor Muhammad Yaoub. Now, Professor Munir bin Youssef will join us representing Hassan II University, our partner. The floor is yours, Sidi Munir.
Thank you very much. It's such a happy day to meet so many young faces, and most of you are part of a network. Even if we are not directly related, we belong to a trade related to the teaching of English. I had an interesting experience in recent years of visiting a few nations that are comparable to Morocco. When we think of Germany or Switzerland or the United States, it's usually difficult to make comparisons because the gap sometimes seems overpowering. But when we make comparisons with comparable countries like Turkey or Romania or Croatia, it gives you an impulse which allows you to think that there is hope and there is also a scope for us to develop. The key word in recent times has been change. And pre-COVID time imposed on us the keyword change as a choice. But immediately after the pandemic landed among us, we found ourselves forced to opt for change. Change is no longer just a luxury. Change is not. There's no other option. And that's why in my talk today, the focal point is the notion of agility, the notion of changing swiftly. I'd like to thank the organizing institutions. It's an interesting acronym team, and I'm happy now to be a member of the Teachers of English in Association in Morocco. The interesting thing again is we no longer feel just a privilege or a choice to be part of such networks, but it is an obligation. We can no longer exist in isolation of networks, whether they are local, regional, or international. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you for giving me a chance to share my thoughts and my 30-year-old concern with the heavy weight of the responsibility of educating several generations. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our professor from Hassan II University. Now, going to give the floor to one of the most active supervisors in the Kazakhstan Arif, Lalla Wafa Al-Fari. The floor is yours. Yeah, you can join us.
Good morning. It was such a surprise here because I didn't expect myself to be talking directly to you. But anyway, let me first welcome our distinguished guests and all of you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to be among you this morning. And I should definitely thank the Regional Academy of Casablanca State, which is this morning represented by Mr. Bouazza on behalf of Mr. Momen Talib, who couldn't make it. I should definitely extend my thanks to Ms. Hanan, who is the head of the local branch of team in the region of Casablanca State. Thank you all for being here, and definitely a great honor to be learning from such, what should I call you? I don't know. I mean, no, okay, definitely. We're friends, but more than that, I think you are a great source of knowledge, of you here. We have been learning a great deal of things from you. And I'll be quoting Mr. bin Youssef who has just said that now change is not a luxury. In fact, it's no longer a luxury, it's a must. This pandemic here has come to reveal that the traditional way of doing things here is no longer working. We have here to upgrade our practices. We have to align our teaching techniques and strategies to the current requirements of the 21st century. You know that now we as teachers, as well as our learners here, can no longer count on our let's say, old ways of doing it here. There is a wide range of skills and abilities that we have to equip ourselves with in order to meet the needs of of today's world here. And these are what we call the 21st century skills here, including technology, learning skills, life skills, and so on. So maybe this is going to add up to what you have already been introduced to in relation to these 21st century skills. I would just maybe wrap up and say thank you so much for all being here and enjoy this study day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Supervisor, Madam Wafa Ghafari, an ELT Supervisor from Hayy Hassani Provincial Directorate within the Casablanca State Arif. And now, on the behalf of the organizing committee and everyone present today, I am pleased to welcome and to thank our speakers, Mr. and Professor Mohammed Ya'ou, our Professor Munir bin Youssef, and our Professor Dries Fadoli. We will start with a keynote speech presented by Mr. Munir bin Youssef, our Professor from Hassan II University, entitled New Horizons in Teaching and Lifelong Career Development. Professor bin Youssef is currently serving Professor of English at the Faculty des Lettres et des Sciences Humaines, Hassan II University, Casablanca. Professor bin Youssef, the floor is yours.
My presentation underwent a little modification last night. So I've been ruminating, I've been thinking about the concept of change. And As I said in my introductory word, change at a certain time seemed to be a luxury. People who thought they needed to be up to date all the time and to remain up to date because they wanted to have a competitive edge in comparison with their peers, whether you are in education, in business or industry. Change seemed to be a luxury, and people who wanted to have a competitive edge opted for change. The pandemic landed overnight, and when we woke up one morning, we discovered that change is no longer a luxury, but a must. And that's why, in order to be up to date all the time, we need to think of two important concepts. One is the concept of agility, swift change all the time, permanent change, constant change. But in order to change, we need to be in keeping with the norms of success. We need to build a paradigm. And this is why the concept of paradigm is very important, because it's made up of a number of components that create a whole. Now, in a recent study, a team of experts pointed out that one of the unique things about education is the fact that in contrast with the world of industry and the world of business, the notion of research and development is not a structured entity. So when we look at a teacher of English, for example, in a little school in Stad or in Darwelza or in Sidi Parnossi, usually people are left to struggle on their own. There is no structured entity called research and development, and that's, as you can see in my presentation, that's the first focal point. The second focal point is that even when we have situations where training is organized, induction days are organized, and schools make an effort to help us move forward, it's not done in a structured manner. It's usually something that comes and lands out of the blue in order to make a difference for one institution, apart from the set of organizations as a whole. The third point, and that's maybe the point where teachers do not often have the right to voice their opinion concerning the political choices which allow teachers to make the right options for development. So the three focal points lead us to the popular Moroccan saying, we are in the education sector and we don't always benefit from education ourselves. We don't benefit from opportunities to develop. And that's why I think that the two key words in my presentation, today are paradigm and agility. You have to make the effort on your own, and you have to make the effort in a network such as TEAM or other associations which allow teachers to come together and to reach results. Why agility? Agility is because if we think about change, and change always lands overnight, we need to think of huge entities like Microsoft or Uber, or today the world is made up of huge business organizations, and the difficulty is to create a balance between the enormous size of an institution, of a business institution, like IBM or Microsoft today, and the So, if we think of such huge business entities, we also need to think of the patterns that organize them. And sometimes that's what creates what is referred to in English as red tape or bureaucracy. Sometimes, rather than being an agent of organization and an agent of development, bureaucracy becomes a heavy weight that doesn't allow structures to move on. In our little corner as agents of education, we need to think of two important concepts. One, creating patterns made up of a set of elements, and to be able to renew this pattern all the time. The paradigm needs to be made, and the paradigm needs to be demolished and recreated all the time. In order to do this, I thought of a triangle which is made up of three cornerstones. I think what is important for most of us is to become aware of the fact that if we are going to succeed in our mission as agents of sharing education with the new generations, we need to be in a position of mastery ourselves. So our knowledge is our capital. If you are going to open potatoes, you shop potatoes. If you're going to sell chocolate, you have to have good quality chocolate. If you are going to open a shop and sell English, your English is your capital. Your English has to be well developed. So the triangle consists of your knowledge, that's your capital, your know-how, that's how you share your knowledge. And the third important element is attitude. Now, in my humble experience, I feel that in order to have a sound attitude, you need to suffer. You need to feel the pain. It's like giving birth to a baby. Recently, I read somewhere that a woman giving birth to a baby feels pain equivalent to 97 broken bones. It's like a feeling that your bones are broken 97 times. I think if you want to be a successful teacher, a successful educator, you have to feel the pain of 97 broken bones. And in order to feel that, in my personal experience, it has been a huge pain to keep balance, to create an equilibrium between two syndromes. The syndrome of Dunning-Kruger, you have probably heard of this before. The syndrome is where people who don't know anything feel that they're experts in their field. And we end up with people who have no knowledge at all, presenting themselves and promoting themselves as experts. And of course, you can understand what would be the consequence. The consequence would be a destructive consequence. And as the tendency of expertise goes along, the development towards the feeling of satisfaction and the feeling of expertise goes up. And we end up with people who are an empty shell, presenting themselves as experts. On the other side, we have the imposter syndrome. In the imposter syndrome, people who are experts in their field have the frustrating feeling and the overpowering feeling that they don't know anything. Now, between these two poles, we have to play the game of balance. We have to create. And in my humble experience, I think moving between these two poles is what allows us to strike the right balance. So the importance of creating a positive attitude is something that needs really an important effort in order to create such an equilibrium. Now, everybody jokes about our profession as being the profession that creates all other professions. And it is important to remember that it is a responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. Maybe you think of yourself as a little teacher of English in a small educational institution in a small village somewhere. But don't forget that your role, and that's something maybe that is special about teaching English in the world, at least today. Maybe it was the role played by the printing press when the printing press was invented. Maybe it was the role played by translation when the Arab world was in command of the whole universe from Andalusia. But the role that English plays today is, in my mind, it has always been so, and it was confirmed when I visited Romania, and I discovered that in Romania they have made the intelligent choice of taking English not as a subject for study in educational institutions, but as a means to achieve an end. English is no longer une matière comme les autres, and very often placed at a very low position in comparison with mathematics or physics. But don't forget that if you master English as a tool in order to acquire knowledge and to acquire know-how, these two important elements, English is no longer just a subject of study in which people try to achieve and to get good marks. English becomes a means towards an end. And this is what they have done. I visited the School of Medicine in Cluj-Napoca in Romania, and the big surprise was that they actually use Romanian, which is their native language, and English, and nothing else. And what is one of the biggest offices that they have in the university is the Office of the Francophonie, the International Office of Francophonie. France is investing huge amounts of money in Romania in order to revive interest in French and in order to boost the presence of French. We are in more or less the same situation, and we keep struggling whether to use French or Arabic in our education, or whether to use Darija, and we are wasting so much time inside discussions. I think time has come for English to occupy its rightful position, that of a means to achieve an end. English is no longer just une matière comme les autres. English is going to be the locomotive that is going to take us further. And this is why I use the money heist or the Casa de Papel example professor. The professor is the one who was responsible for creating all the other roles and dispatching the responsibilities. Our role today is to play this focal, to occupy this focal position and to play this key role. But in order to do that, we need to develop, number one, to develop our knowledge, and our knowledge needs to be developed all the time. In order to do this, in our specific position, we have to benefit from whatever is available to us. Number one, international institutions. Anyone in this room must always have a little bag full of tools. What are these tools? The tools of development. Number one, what you know. Number two, how you develop what you know and how you share what you know. And number three, your attitude. Your attitude will be that of keeping balance, keeping your psychological balance. But most importantly, you need to always be ready to move forward. Number one, you must always be in contact with the national universities. Hassan Sakir University, if you're in Casablanca, Kari in Jadida, Qadi Iyad in Marrakesh, in Oujda, in Fez, in Agadir. You always keep in touch. If you don't have a contact in a national university, you are lost. You have to be aware all the time of what's going on. master degrees, PhD opportunities, research opportunities. You need to be in your toolbox. This is an essential element. Your own development. The notion of research and development, as I said at the beginning, is not well structured by institutions. We need to structure it, and I think this is the role that important institutions, key institutions like TEAM can play this role of networking. How does networking help us in order to create the link with national universities, international research organizations, scholarships? And as you can see in my slide, we have, for example, you need to have on your home screen, you need to have Chevening scholarship, and you need to have Fulbright scholarship, and you need to have Indian scholarship, South African scholarship. All the time, you need to keep your books open for your self-development. Another important thing is training. We hear of training, but unfortunately, it's not a well-organized thing. Sometimes it's Oxford University Press, sometimes it's Pearson's, sometimes it's institutions who do such meetings, of course, for obvious reasons, which are their own sales and for selling books and selling their. But the benefit is important for us. When we get together, we share experience thanks to what they do. So, number one, you need to have a permanent link with your university with a capital U, whether it's local or international. Number two, you need to be permanently aware of what's going on in terms of innovations in training. And number three, if you're not a member of a network, you simply don't exist. So affiliation to TEAM, affiliation to a local organization, affiliation to a team within your institution are vital things. For example, a few years ago, I created the Ain Shaq English Department Alumni Group. And today it has something like 300 or 400 members. It's important if you are an alumni of Shu'aib Perry University to be able to have a say in the choices of the university and also to benefit from its innovations. Now, we all know that in order to start a job, you're always asked to present evidence of experience. Where do you get experience? If you are not given a chance to get an internship or to try and at least observe a class or two. Now, your piston, in order to get someone to pull the strings for you to get your first opportunity to get experience or to get your first professional opportunity, if your uncle doesn't know someone who knows someone who knows the minister, you never get this chance. I think the best way to do it today is to know someone who knows someone who is part of your network. And that way you pull your own strings and you have a say in your own development. The next important thing is your know-how. When we come out of school, our first toolbox is full of different methodologies, grammar, translation, communicative classroom. Today, everybody is talking about e-learning and about blended learning, etc. It's true that such trends are important, and we can see that with time, methodology changes constantly and methodology progresses all the time. But what is important is to be in charge of your own career. Career development is not something that you decide after you have spent 10 years doing the same thing. Career development is something that you start before you start. So career planning is something that you need to start at the same time as your career. Your day one in a teaching position is day one in questioning your position and getting ahead and moving forward. And in order to do this, either you train yourself, or again, this is where the role of organized institutions is important. An institution like TEAM, an institution like the regional directorate of the Ministry of Education, these are frameworks where you need to find opportunities for self-development. The next important the next important element is in your toolbox. If you say that I'm doing it in the right way and I'm happy with what I'm doing currently, that is what I call professional suicide. If you say, I have always been doing it this way, and I have always been feeling fine, that's what the caveman said when the wheel was invented. And instead of using the advantages of the wheel, they kept pushing heavy weights. The pyramids would have never been built if we depended on Now, to conclude, my colleagues will present to you specific know-how in the field of class management, in the field of methodology, in the field of self-development. But my suggestion to you, I wouldn't dare give you advice, because advice presupposes that you are in a better position. No one here is in a better position. The best position is to question yourself all the time, and the best position is to go back to the starting point with the 3 cornerstones. You need to work on your attitude, you need to work on your knowledge, and you need to work on your know-how. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our beloved Professor Sidi Munir bin Yusuf, for shedding light on his keynote speech about the statement of agility here. The keyword for Mr. bin Yusuf was agility here. In his keynote speech, Professor bin Yusuf stated that in order to meet the challenges of our constantly changing educational environments, we must subject to constant assessment our understanding of the learning process and teaching practices. According to Professor bin Yusuf, if you want to be a successful educator, if you want to be a successful ELT practitioner, you must feel the pain of 97 broken bones. So it's going to be a quote. I will take it as a motto of my life. Our professor also developed a toolbox for teachers to carry every day, which is a bag that has to be filled with 3 important elements: is, what you know, how to know, and finally, attitudes. Thank you very much, Professor Munir bin Yusuf. And now we will go through our second speaker, Professor Mohammed Yao. Professor Mohammed Yao is a full professor of linguistics and English at the Department of English, Faculty of Letters, Shuaib Dukali University. He is the Vice Dean in charge of scientific research and cooperation and the Director of Applied Language and Cultural Studies Research Group at the same institution. Professor Mohammed Yao, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
So the title of my presentation is Thank you, thank you. Sharing this screen is important. So the title of my presentation is Teaching During COVID-19, Challenges and Coping Strategies. The objective of this presentation is, or this is how I have organized my presentation. I wanted to talk about the challenges that were encountered by us teachers of English, either at the university or in high schools. And I wanted also to talk about tips or what are some of the strategies that we can use during, when we are faced with the obligation to teach online or to teach in a hybrid way. Let me start with the introduction, and that we as teachers have already used ICT in our classrooms, but you know that in 2020 we were obliged to not use ICT as a supplement to education, something complementary, but we were obliged to use online teaching or distance teaching in a full-time manner. Of course, lots of education systems were not ready for this. This is the importance of belonging to a network, belonging to an association, should be very helpful to support us as teachers, because we felt we were on our own, we don't have the help. Of course, this is what I will talk about, different types of teaching practices and experiences. For example, in our university, I will talk about how some kind of support was given to professors, and maybe I will give the floor when we talk about share some of you if you have this support or not. So I wanted to first look at whether there has been any studies in the Moroccan context. I haven't found any study that looked at what was going on in classrooms across Morocco. Of course, this is something that is still ongoing. There has been lots of projects call for projects that were financed by the CNRST, Centre National de Recherche Scientifique. We had the COVID-19 call for projects in order to do studies, surveys on what was going on in classrooms across Morocco. I looked at and I found a very interesting survey done by the British Council, and this survey covers, in terms of sample size, it is an important study because the sample size includes at least around 9,000 respondents across 150 countries. So I will share with you some of the results of this study, and I'm sure that we will have the same feedback, same challenges encountered by these respondents across all over the world with the challenges that we encountered here in Morocco. The pandemic situation has made, of course, extreme demands on teachers, but still we have shown exceptional commitment, and some of the teachers were not ready to use ICT, but they have learned e-learning in a very brief time. In 2 or 3 weeks, they were able to get connected and teach online. Some of the teachers used phones and social messaging in order to get connected with their students. Others used worksheets and Google Docs and other or Google Classroom, which are free to use. Now, this is the survey I talked about. It's a survey that has a wide coverage, regional coverage, going from Africa, the MENA region, South Asia, East Asia, and so on. And this survey relates to respondents who are working in public schools, private schools, higher education institutions, and even teacher educators. Now, first, one of the questions that were asked in this survey was whether are you teaching synchronously or asynchronously, and 59% of the respondents say they teach synchronously, and 75% teach asynchronously. An important finding is that 50% of states, those who are working in the public institutions, say they teach synchronously, but 75% of teachers working in private institutions teach synchronously. This shows, that or the gap between private and public institutions. I'm sure that we have the same experience here in Morocco, where private institutions, of course, the students who are enrolled there, they come from communities in terms of socioeconomic background, that they have the means to get the connection and to have the appropriate devices, laptops and tablets. Whereas the others who come from a social background that is a low working class communities or rural areas, this is where, of course, the costs of connection and the unavailability of devices make them, it would be impossible for them to get connected online. So let me now move on to talk about the main challenges that were encountered by these teachers. One of the important, the challenge that comes first is student motivation. I'm sure that you have had this challenge to motivate students to get the engagement of students when you were teaching online or when you were teaching at a distance. So here you have some of the codes or some of the codes from because this survey has been done using qualitative research methodology, that is using we have the qualitative part where we have answers from a questionnaire, but we have also a response that is obtained by doing interviews. So you've got this. These are very important codes that show you the challenges that were encountered by individual teachers. So here's one, for instance: working from online feels disconnected. I would like help in motivating students who seem distant. They seem distant. From the start, they seem tired. Students are disconnected. And second challenge, which would be probably the theme of the next talk, is class management. So how can you observe learners when you teach online? How can you control? How can you check whether the students are really learning or not? Next is how to assess. How to assess. Assessment, I mean, how to check that homework has been done online. And of course, assessment, when we talk about assessment, we have the problem of whether the tests that are done online, whether this is really the work has been done by the student himself or he has been cheating and so on. Next, a challenge, which is a very important one within the Moroccan context, is inclusion. I talked about I have given you the percentage, 75, 50%. If we look at the percentage here in Morocco and see whether students from rural areas, of course, with the problems of the internet and connectivity, I'm not sure that they have this, the means to get this connection. And another challenge is student and teacher well-being. I'm sure that you were very exhausted, you were overwhelmed when doing distance learning. I will talk about my experience and I show you what we were doing at the university. And so this tiredness and this, of course, it's this, when you feel very tired, overwhelmed, and when you see the result, when you see that your students are motivated and engaged, and when you see that after doing some assessment and you find out that your teaching has had the positive impact on performance, then you forget about this tiredness and of course, what are the other challenges is longer time spent on preparation and administration. Of course, this is related to getting exhausted and tired because we spend a lot of time preparing online classes. The time it takes to prepare online classes is not limited. So I will. How much time do we have? Still 5 minutes. Only 5 minutes. So other challenges, I will skip some of these challenges, but I will just name the title of these challenges. We have the challenge of developing learning autonomy. How can you encourage students to be autonomous? Also, the problem of equipment. I have mentioned this earlier. the challenge of this century is not to have textbooks for every student. The challenge is to have a device, to have a tablet, a laptop, an appropriate device in order to get connected. This is a summary of the challenges I talked about. Now, I will move very quickly to see what were the devices that were used by the teachers during the pandemic. Now, as you can see, this most teachers, most of them use videos and audio calls, 60%. 55% used LMS, like Moodle, and they used virtual classrooms, either LMS or either Moodle or Canvas. But some of them used social media and phone calls. Now, I will move on to talk about distant teaching in Morocco, and I will describe two experiences or two stories from two Moroccan universities. I will start with School of Letters at Tbilisi, and then I will move on to Shahid University. E-learning was already developed in the Department of English at Mississippi University as early as 2007. This initiative was developed by Moujib Bouziane. He has already developed a Moodle platform back in 2007. It was not obligatory. This Moodle platform was only supplement to face-to-face teaching. A similar initiative was made by me back in 2010. Also, I launched a Moodle platform, and I encouraged colleagues to post online classes at this platform. But again, this was done in a blended manner. That is, we used face-to-face teaching, and we used the Moodle platform only as a supplement. This is an example of an online class of grammar back in 2010. However, it is interesting because in January 2020, we launched this Moodle platform just 2 months before the pandemic. 2 months. We did this subscription because we paid the subscription to host this platform, and we encouraged colleagues to set up classes on this platform. At first there were like 6 or 7 colleagues, but then this was extended to all the departments. Here is a screenshot of the platform. It has classes going from semester 2 to semester 4 and even semester 6. This slide gives you the percentage of classes that were posted online. For semester 2, 86% of classes were posted online. Semester 4, only 67%, and semester 6, 17%. Now, 17% means there was only 1 class out of the 6 classes. The reason is that other professors opted for Facebook groups, others used WhatsApp, and also others use Microsoft Teams. Now, why Microsoft Teams? Because the policy of the university was to use Microsoft Teams. But Microsoft Teams, you know, it's not an LMS, it's not for educational purposes, it's just a communication tool used by companies. And here again, you see the problem of connectivity. I think that it's very hard for students who are complaining. They use like Microsoft Teams for about one session or two, and then that's it. They couldn't catch up. So that's one of the problems that were encountered by students, is the cost of connection. Here is this graph which show you the percentage of classes posted on Moodle at Benedict University. We see that there is a high percentage of classes posted online. It goes up to 98%. The difference between Shankar University and Hassan Second University in Benedict is that in Benedict, the Moodle platform was extended to all the departments: history, geography, philosophy, and English studies and Islamic studies. English studies, we have a percentage of 76% of coverage. Yes. This graph shows you, because sometimes when you ask students or teachers what they were doing using only questionnaires, this doesn't give you an objective view of, because teachers and students can give you answers just like that, but you don't have an objective measure of what the students and teachers were doing. This Moodle platform can give you the possibility to check and monitor who entered and who joined, and what are the number of visits to your, whatever online class you have posted, or whatever activity. I'm sure you know about this. This graph shows you that number of students in March 2020 was 1,500. This number has gone up to 2,600 in April, and then went down to 1,000 and then 500 in June and July. This shows that students use the platform only to get connected, download the lessons, use the lessons in PDF format. Again, we have the problem of cost of connection. Okay, it would be interesting to study what is the geographical region where students get connected. This is something that is also interesting to. This table gives you the variation between students that enroll in Moodle. We have, for example, for Grammar S2, only 190 students used Moodle, compared to 1,107 as they are registered in the Apogee system. So only 16% use the Moodle platform. It's a pity. It's a pity, and that's we talk about equity, and we talk about how we can treat students in a fair way. Students from the rural areas or students from poor communities, don't have the means to get connected, and that's a big problem. That's why I think the ministry was aware of this, and the exams that were organized in the spring session were only limited to classes that were delivered face-to-face. Now, here is a screenshot of some of the classes that were registered. As I told you, some of the colleagues used Microsoft Teams, and we have this possibility to record the online classes and to post these recordings onto this YouTube channel that we created for this purpose. This is an interesting an interesting idea, and we have even used this channel as a supplement to teaching this year. Because this year, Jadida, we taught face-to-face, full face-to-face. But we had the materials. We have the platform, the Moodle platform, the online classes are there. We have the YouTube channel. So it's interesting now to use the materials we have developed during the pandemic as a supplement for face-to-face teaching. I will skip this. And I will move on to the coping strategies. One strategy is that you should not reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of online teaching tools and materials that are already available, so you don't need to start from zero. Look out for of course, available materials. You have the British Council, you have the many tools that are available. Try to go global. It is important to think about what is appropriate and suitable for your learners. For example, do you think that Microsoft Teams is the appropriate tool, or do you think that just WhatsApp or Facebook would be the appropriate tool? In some institutions follow the institutional policy. For instance, in University of Mohammed VI, they have already an LMS. Canvas is the LMS is the one that is adopted by this university. So you have to follow suit. You have to use this system. But if you are in your own institutions and you don't have any established or any any institutional or if you want to, there is not any tool that is already selected, then you have to find something that is appropriate for your learners. Don't use all the available tools. Just focus on quality. Do not, for instance, use Moodle, WhatsApp, and Microsoft Teams all at the same time. Opt only for one tool. Join the party, get connected with the teaching community, and that's what we're doing today, to share practices and seek support. Don't assume that your learners have excellent digital skills. I always start with the practice session. Always start with orientation session. I was surprised that even with S4, S6 students at the university, they don't know how to log in, how to just devise a password. You know, this Moodle, in order to devise a password, you need to select uppercase, lowercase, alphanumeric characters. So they have to know what is an alphanumeric character, what is uppercase, and the number of characters for this password. These are, you know, how to navigate through the platform, some of the things, how to set up the audio, how to set up mic, important instructions that you need to give to students. Don't feel the need to try to use multiple platforms, so only one platform. Choose the one that is free. There has been some webinars posted by the BPC, the British Council, and they encourage teachers to use free devices like Google Docs and Google Suite. These are very interesting tools to use, where not only you share materials with your students, but also students can collaborate. They can add, for example, examples. If you teach grammar and you share a lesson, students can contribute by using Google Doc. You can contribute more examples. That's one. Of course, I don't go into the details, but maybe we can do this in the question and answer session. Planning is very important. Detailed planning. There are similarities between face-to-face learning and online learning, but the same planning, the same organization, the same principles of good teaching apply here in online distance learning. The importance of giving objectives at the beginning of your online class, the same. So the same principles of good teaching should be applied when you teach online. Of course, the delivery is different. The interaction, of course, is different, and sometimes you need to have plan B. If things go wrong, you need to have a plan B. Always start with the simple structure. Simple structure with the warmer language input, control practice, and then theory practice, and of course, summary at the end. Think of the things that can be done online, synchronously, and things that can be done offline. You can vary also, important thing, you can vary the teaching practice, and this is a way to get more engagement and motivation from your students. Variation is very important. You can, for example, start with the flipped approach, give students materials beforehand. For example, if you are teaching comprehension, give the comprehension text, share it using Google Docs, and then you can do the comprehension questions during the online class. Or if you share, you can share the grammar slides, and then you can work on the exercises online. So this way you can motivate students so they don't feel bored. Okay, I think I have just 1 minute or two. 1 minute or two.
Yes.
This slide will give you the summary of checklist that you need to remember. Have you decided what you want the learners to achieve by the end of the lesson? That is the objectives and the outcomes. Do you know how are you going to present the new material? Are you going to use audio recordings? Are you going to use images? Are you going to use PDF extracts from your course book? Or are you going to use PowerPoint slides? Have you decided who your learners will interact with during the lesson, when and how? Do you know how you will check your learners' answers to the different activities? And do you know which different resources you will be using? And of course, you need to keep these to a minimum. Have you worked out how long each section will take? This is also related to planning. And finally, do you have a plan when the technology fails? I think that's it for today. I will give the floor to my colleague.
Thank you very much, our professor from Shuaib Kali, Professor Mohammed Yaro. In fact, I was now looking for a word to describe your presentation. I couldn't, I couldn't find an easy adjective. If you all allow me, I opted for the adjective choose. An choose presentation in which you presented how teachers of English have already embraced ICT in their professional work and development. Why? Since it is a supplement to face-to-face instruction, and also showed some practical tips for teaching English remotely using appropriate platforms. Thank you very much once again. Just before we move to our next distinguished speaker, Professor Dries Fadoli, I would like to announce to our distinguished attendees that questions and comment sessions will take place at the end of Professor Fadoli's presentation. Our second announcements will be presented to our attendees online. Please, if you want to receive your attendance certificates, please click on a link of Google Form and complete it via the chat room. Before I give you the floor, Fadoli, I am going to shift to Arabic now so that we take this occasion باش بغينا نديروا واحد قراءة سورة الفاتحة ترحما على الأستاذ بن خدام الله يرحمه، أستاذ من جامعة أبي شعيب الدكالي، من خيرة الأساتذة اللي عرفهم المغرب. لسوء الحظ أو ما كانش ممكن نتنقلوا باش نحضروا الجنازه ديالو، دواعي ظروف كوفيد، وهذه واحد الفرصه جاتنا هنا في مدينه الدار البيضاء باش نقراو سوره الفاتحه ترحما على روح الفقيد الانسان الطيب سي بن خدام. ف ندعوكم ان شاء الله توقفوا لقراءه سوره الفاتحه.
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
ربما هنا الأغلبية يعرفوا الأستاذ، ربما الأغلبية أستاذ الله يرحمه اللي كان تيفتح المنزل ديالو للطلبة، كان تيفتح عنده مركز اللغات تيفتحوا للطلبة، واحد الجيل ديال الطلبة اللي كانوا تيديروا الدراسات ديال الست الماجستير تخصص ترجمة، كان تيفتح لهم دارو وتفتح لهم السلطة ديالهم وتيعاون الله يرحمه ويوسع عليهم ولي رحمته الله. Now, Sylvie Fadoli, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's really my pleasure. Thank you so much, morning, everyone. Once more, it's really my pleasure to be here among you. Thank you for your presence. Let me first thank the members of Teams local branch of Casablanca and staff for their really wonderful job and effort on organizing such a great study day. Thank you so much once more. As you
Could
can
you please
see,
just give me 1 minute? Just I forgot to present Si Fadoli Idris. Si Fadoli Idris, our last distinguished speaker, is a professor of communication and mass media studies at Shuaib Dakar University in Al Jalila. Professor Fadoli serves as a member of Team National Board. The floor is yours, Si Fadoli, and sorry once again.
as you can see, my presentation is actually on the most effective classroom management strategies. Basically, the most important skills and practices to gain and maintain students' cooperation. The intended purpose behind this activity actually is to instigate you as teachers, practitioners, whether as being novice teachers or senior teachers, to reflect on your own classroom management practices and perhaps hopefully to develop new strategies for a better classroom climate conducive for learning. Particularly, it is designed to lead you understand that students are actually more and mostly will be on task and engaged in a learning environment classroom where achievement is given paramount importance. And of course, to make you understand that you have to communicate and emphasize expectations for conduct. And of course, to develop a set of proactive, I would call it preventive and sustained skills for a better form of classroom organizational leadership. As you can see, the outline is, of course, I'll start with a look at some of the teaching learning experiences, and I'll leave it to you to decide whether they are satisfying or frustrating. Then we will move to look at how we can actually establish and design this kind of particular favorable climate for cooperation among student support and among teachers and students themselves. Taking advantage of initial uncertainties, those really first moments when you come face to face with your students. And of course, we will have a look at how we can establish first the importance of rules and routines, and how we can establish a set of rules and routines. We will have a look at the concept of displaying weightedness and how we can actually materialize it and substantiate it in our classroom. And then we will move to look at how we can orchestrate smooth, efficient transitions when it comes to activities in our classrooms. Then briefly we'll have a look at how we can accommodate students who complete work at different times. You know, learners, they have different abilities, slow learners, early achievers, and more. The importance of body language and proximity in your classroom, and how we can avoid disruptive teacher behavior. And of course, we will have a look at how we can work out the sort of individual differences among students. Finally, we'll have a look at some further suggestions. These are typical ones, conceptual ones, perhaps to set up this kind of achievable and inspired for rapport in classroom. Perhaps the first idea that comes to mind when the concept of classroom management is brought to the fore is that you may think of it as something that comes as natural, and that's something that you need no actual academic or formal training on that, since most teachers would actually be concerned with content and instructions in their classroom. Or perhaps you may think of this as something that is merely related to control and discipline, or even some teachers' personalities. Of course, part of this is true, but if you think so, let me just instigate you to rethink and consider this kind of assumptions, if not actually misconceptions. I invite you here to have a look at this image. It's really an internet troll. I'm sure that you have watched the Moroccan film. It's the class 8, section 8. And of course, the kind of, it's, for now, it's a funny thing, going viral from time to time on the internet spaces, etc. But lately, of course, those kind of students who misbehave and taking this sort of as a model kind of student, which is a story and sad story to tell, but I purposely intended to bring this to the fore so that we can contextualize the discussion and the issue in our classroom management. So please, I want you here to engage emotionally with this image. Try to put yourselves in the shoes of this teacher. How would you actually feel having this kind of chaotic classroom? Such kind of uncontrollable students from time to time having to instigate problems in your classroom. Why you only being highly, I would say, prepared, having a lot of sort of engaging, motivational activities for your students, and this stuff goes on. Now, I need you actually to engage emotionally. Put yourselves in the shoes of these teachers I told you a couple of minutes ago, and how do you feel? What is your reaction in this case? Now, I even ask you to recall whether you have had this experience or have actually observed that friends of yours, a colleague, having this kind of class. What kind of emotions we would actually relate associated with this kind of situation? Of course, the least that you can say is frustration on the part of teachers, being enraged, feeling somehow in a sort of inadequacy, getting demotivated, or you're blaming it on the entire educational system. Now, I further invite you to, these are statements stated by actual stakeholders in the educational system. Articulated by teachers, students, even some parents. I need you to reflect on these statements. The first one is, school is a joke. I don't learn anything because the teachers are so busy trying to keep order that they do not take time to teach. Obviously, this is a frustrated student, hardworking one, trying, aspiring just to get his share of the learning time in classroom. Second one, I became a teacher because I love knowledge and I wanted to help children, but these pupils do not want my help. Another similar one, but this one is a teacher asking just for help. Now, I used to look forward to teach each school day. Now I start days hoping I can survive until school is out without being driven crazy, overall embarrassed, worse, physically harmed. And of course, now you can tell the sort of high rate of violence in Moroccan classrooms, violence among students, violence administered actually on teachers themselves, and the story goes on. Teacher, this is actually students playing the devil's role. Okay, so teachers should exert more control. Look at the second part. I just played around in school, rarely paid attention or did homework. What good does it do teachers to know all the subject matter and pedagogy in the work if they cannot control the kids? Frustrated parents, maybe schools. Now, the idea is that if we consider this kind of statements, kind of images, kind of mainstream channel, media press, and all the kind of discourse going on, you can find out that the only part here to be blamed is teachers. And this is a sad story to be sort of propaganda in a way, because most of the stakeholders in the educational system look with a sort of suspicious eye to teachers. Now, the story is not a bleak one always. I invite you actually to have a look at this teacher, Mrs. Kayali. These are actually realistic situations and case studies. They're not imaginary ones. They're not trouble what would ever kind of side. They are realistic ones. Of course, with a sort of change in terms of teachers' names for sort of privacy and the other issues. As the bell rings, Mrs. Bailey enters her room, ready to start class. The students who have been milling around and socializing stop what they have been doing as soon as one student spots her and says, she's here. Quietly, they go to their places without a word from Mrs. Bailey. They place the power on their desk, and it goes on. Now, if I ask you actually to reconsider this kind of paradox, having this kind of whole sort of classroom situations where we have, ranging from chaos to, I would say, complete cooperation of discipline or order, you would say that we can raise the same questions in a way. Is it actually is it actually a question of teachers' charisma in this case? Mrs. Bailey? She shows up, everybody is just not milling around and in his place perfect. Is it the kind of student's background, social background? Is it the school's background and more? The questions actually go on like this. Now, I would like actually to frame my claim here within a scientific background and see what research has to say on this kind of classroom management and the best practices and the unsuccessful ones. Now, all the studies, classic ones, current ones, emphasize the idea that effective classroom managers and ineffective classroom managers did not differ substantially in terms of responses to misbehavior. I need you to reflect on this. It means that though they have almost the same sort of reaction to misbehavior when it occurs and pops up in classroom. But what is the difference? What is the major difference here is regarding the kind of strategies, preventive ones, proactive, being proactive to a great extent that you de-escalate the intensity of this sort of misbehavior reactions. Now, by the way, if we have to contextualize this statement, we have a look at the Moroccan classrooms, and specifically, I know that most of the teachers, starting from the Ministerial Misbehavior Response Guidelines, Notice 14 regarding the how you can deal with misbehavior in your classroom, the schools, like the sort of, teachers would say, okay, he has only to do some sort of gardening in school, no kind of suspension, no kind of being penalized in terms of grades, etc. This is, of course, the ministerial notice recommending that you have to look for alternative misbehavior reactions or sanctions in a way, apart from suspending the students from his rightful time of learning, rightful time of being around in school, and so on. Now, the notice, of course, is, I would say, look like a curse on teachers, and it hurt teachers other kind of alternatives. We usually know, of course, we're not talking about the physical punishments and the kind of physical, I would say, tension going on in teachers and students. Now, this notice, as I told you, like consulting school, all of Moroccan teachers, in a way, my point is that when misbehavior occurs, you would even call for the headmaster's office, consulting the student to visit the headmaster's office for time out, freezing, suspension from having courses for, let's say, 15 minutes, or even just 1 day, 2 weeks, and it goes on like this. the same students would come to classroom, would instigate the same sort of misbehavior, and having nothing to deal with this kind of student. And worse, recommending library activities for students. Theoretically, this is something I would say recommendable, but if we just try to assess and gauge a sort of cultural, contextual aspects and factors for everyone, you would say this is a dreamlike situation where you can find yourself immersed and research. Now, coming to terms, we've been talking about classroom management practices. What is classroom management practice in the first place? Of course, you would come up with a lot of, I would say, definitions, but the most agreed one, the most, I would say, reliable, or the most now common is this one. Classroom management can be described as a process consisting of the following 5 key areas: organizing the physical design, to a great extent, something that you have nothing to do or change as a teacher, except for the fact that you ask your students to, get in groups of pair group, changing the tables, the kind of, we know the story, kind of tremendous effort on teachers to move in this mode of headward, upward, and communicative modality of teaching. Now, the second part is interesting. Establishing rules and routines, developing caring relationships, implementing and engaging effective instruction, and of course, finally, addressing discipline issues. So, classroom management practice is not only about dealing with discipline controls. In the, I would say, in the Alden's Shakespearean phrase, there is more to it than meets the eye. The story is not, it's only the iceberg if you just are concerned with disciplining students instead. Now, how can we actually implement and make sure that we have an effective classroom management practice in our classroom? Let's have a look. The first one is you have to establish a favorable climate for cooperation. And I intentionally put there cooperation, not teaching, learning, cooperation, for, we've been talking about the 21st skills, how to cope up with change, and how actually to keep track of the major society changes of cooperation. Now you need to strive for establishing a transformative classroom. How can we characterize this kind of transformative classroom? What are the elements of this transformative classroom? Now, the basic one is the discourse you opt for regarding how to deal with your students and how students deal with each other. It must be a transformational communication discourse. Having this kind of validating students' needs, validating actually students' values in a way, and not trying to change them, but to look for, try to instigate them to look for opportunities. Remember this? It's not the fact that you have to change, because change is something, I would say, that takes a lot of time, effort, and it's not the only one, you who is actually in charge of this. And you say, okay, for sure, I can make it realizable. No, change, of course, is something that is a process and ongoing one. But you strive to be part of this by trying to surfacing or rounding for your students sorts of opportunities. Why are they here in the first place in the classroom? Are they just for grades? Are they just for learning? Are they just for, I would say, reverberating or just giving back the kind of content, or for something else? It's up for you as a teacher to, adopt this kind of discourse. Of course, it's a motivational discourse at heart, but you need to match it to students. Each classroom, you have some kind of different students, some kind of majority students. You need to match up your discourse, and every time try to insert some, I would say, salt to your kind of, instead of just complaining, instead of just dealing with sort of misbehavior for you. Now, caring and nurturing relationships. Now, you are going to get respect only when you give it. You are going to get this sort of trust when you only have to give it to your students. You need to cultivate this culture of trust. I know that you have to deal with different sorts of students. Some of them would actually just be just trouble catalyzers, having nothing to do with the kind of profile I'm talking about, with the learning environment. They would say, okay, this has nothing to do with this, it has nothing to do with classroom environment, school environment, but we have to face it. You have to look for those kind of students and show them some sorts of opportunities. They're looking for, they're asking in a way for sorts of signals for you to show them how they are actually and how that they belong to your classroom. And of course, you have to strive to develop this sort of psychology of success. It's not all the time, I would say, uplifting others, the other students should be demotivated. You still have to edify others. In a way, when we say edify, you look for those kind of hard achievers, good students, and edify their potentials. You have just to enlarge their scope so that you can strike a balance. Now, this is theoretically actually. Now, let's look for the practical ones. The first and most important part is the management of learning. Of course, to avoid having trouble in your classroom, you need to meet students' needs. It's not just a question of, I have to cater for my students every single piece of worksheets on grammar or reading comprehension without having to look at the content of this. You just, for the gap fillers, for, say, time sake for other issues, maybe teachers being busy or others, you look for whatever kind of material out there, maybe old ones, and you just try to hand it over to your students. No, a little of meeting students' needs. And you're the only one who can tell actually what your students need in a way. Because you are the only one who gets in sort of contact on a daily basis with your students, perhaps more than what they spend the time afterwards in their home. Now, planning realistic objectives, and now people have started talking about SMART objectives, be specific when you have to design your objectives. It's not just they have to learn the present perfect and that's it. No, you should be specific. You have to compartmentalize this kind of teaching structure and look for specific structural objective. You must be specific. Students, by the end of the session, will be able to do this and this and this specifically. So SMART, specific, reliable, achievable, and time-bound. Now, prepare for varied lesson activities. Of course, the pace of work, the pace of process in your classroom should be, varied. Not just the sort of monotonous one, having only to spend whole session on just one part of the lesson of the units. It's just grammar or reading and no kind of, variation, varies, versatile, so that you can make sure at least that you gain on your part students' motivation. And of course, lead the others to engage. Now, teaching to require content centers, some would say competencies, being adopted rather than just sticking to the textbook in itself. Sometimes teachers, effective teachers, they just look for different variant worksheets for different material, different resources. They try to, I would say, tailor this kind of content to their students' level, their students' needs, and it goes on. Not just you stick to the book as it's, to the letter. Of course, there is a sort of official requirement that you have to stick to some, I would say, transcribed or, recommended textbooks. That's something which is for the sake of, I would say, official requirements and for the sake of keeping sort of unified content, but this does not mean that you have to look for other resources and providing constructive feedback. And this I can relate it to the climate, the psychology of success. How every time you look for positive feedback, even to those catalyzers, trouble catalyzers, in a way, remember, not changing them, but open up horizons for them to look for opportunities in what they're doing actually. They come into classroom for something. Try to work on this. By the way, when the first part was conceptual, and it's something that relates only to the work of heart and logic. Something that relates to you as a passion teacher, as someone who strives for change, looking for this sort of change, and having forced to wait perhaps a longer time to see that kind of change substantiated. And of course, this is for the senior teachers. From time to time, you come across, some good faces, old students having to tell you, okay, sir, thank you so much for the kind of job you did with us. Now I'm having to, I'm in this position, I'm in this and this and this. You feel, of course, that, of course, you're proud of your students and feel that you have contributed something to your career. Now, taking advantage of initial uncertainties. Now, in the beginning of the year, of course, no matter what age group you teach, your students come to you for the first time filled with sorts of uncertainties. You need to seize the opportunities and either you confirm those kind of gossip stereotypes around you, or you disconfirm them. Now, of course, we've been students, and each time, the name of I would say, teacher rings a bell for students, they say, okay, this is, oh my God, we're going to have fun with this kind of teacher. It's a complete sort of party. Let's, I can call even my neighbors to come in, join the classroom of this particular teacher with no sort of observational sorts of reaction. And some other kinds of teachers say, oh, you should be careful. You have to stick to this. He asks for this, she asks for this particular, and you have to comply. You have to observe this kind of, and it goes on. So it's the work of, let's say, 50–70% of trouble being saved on your part by the other students having to, by the word of mouth, telling this kind, spreading this message. And you need to take the advantage of the attention that students afford you on those kinds of moments. In that particular moment, you need to establish the sorts of rules, routines, and you communicate them, emphasize them, teach them, model them. For the, I would say, the whole 3 months, beginning 3 months of the year.
Sorry to interrupt you, Professor Fadoli. Yeah, this 2 minutes, please.
Sorry, I have to skip. Anyway, very quickly. So, rules and routines. You should know that you have to set up some reasonable rules and routines, 4 or 5 months. Lesson routines, movement routines. Of course, they help you in terms of stability, consistency, etc. Now, displaying witness. What is witness? It's the act of being involved in every single act on the part of students. It's like to say the teacher has eyes in the back of his head, having to know everything in your classroom, not just sticking to one place, your desk, and just making the kind of trouble going on. It's the way you have to deal with the first misbehavior act that pops up, and the way you have to deal with it. You have to make this kind of ripple effect. Either is it positive or negative one. The students, the other students, they watch, they observe you how you are going to react on the part of the first kind of reaction, and they can tell, they can judge you. Overlapping, you need the force to multitask in your classroom, monitoring proximity to your students. Now, orchestrated smooth, efficient transitions. I was intending to let you have a look at this situation, but the best way is that you have to give enough time of tasking to your students. Give notice before you ask them to stop and move to the next activity. Tell them to stop working and freeze for a certain time. Let's say 1 minute. Then, of course, comes the role of clear and concise directions. You have to do this and this. And of course, this is such a time, and why not? You already have handed over the kind of material before you. Before you do it on the spot, the students already have this kind of worksheet, let's say grammar reading. You just ask them to put aside the other stuff, move to the next one. Accommodating students to complete work at different times. Of course, what we have to do is actually related to differentiation. You have to make this kind of leveled out sorts of activities, gap fillers for early finishers, etc., so that they cannot feel, I would say, bored and feel that they have lost already the attention of their favorite teacher. And proximity, I ask you please to have a look at this image. Look at the reaction of this teacher. Is it just something that is recommendable or not? As teacher, now we have some students out there back at the back talking, enjoying the time, which is monitoring the work of the group. Is this positive? Of course, we would say no. You need to be as proximate as to your students as possible. Look at this reaction of this teacher. Proximity is very important, and eye contact, all this kind of body language is very important. Finally, avoiding disruptive teacher behavior. Sometimes, like this case, the students are working in a silent way, very engaged, and the teacher just looks for a sort of different activity, asking the students to follow classroom to move from one activity to another without this sort of smooth transitions and with this kind of very quick pace, and being herself, the disruptive teacher, the disruptive source of the classroom. And of course, working with individual differences. I talked about differentiation, academic one, behavior one. Now some further suggestions. Sorry, just 2 minutes. I have to finalize my presentation. You have to personalize instructions and tasks when need be. Designate specific area of the whiteboard for posting the homework and any important reminders. Develop a do now. Once your students come into your classroom, to just make sure that they are engaged directly, develop a do now. They have to do something, actually, maybe review of the part for 5 minutes so that you can minimize this sort of chaos, I would say, this behavior, and make sure your students get engaged directly. Now, of course, expect some students to test you to determine the boundaries of acceptable behavior and your competency to respond. Now, of course, you need to deal with those sorts of minor infractions in a very assertive way and very affirmative way. Otherwise, you assume the consequences. Avoid causing students to lose face in front of the other students. Whenever we have to, I would say, penalize, talk to one of the students, the trouble catalyzers, avoid talking or dealing with this sort of students in front of the other students. You have to personalize, take him aside, maybe outside the classroom, not, of course, in front of the others. Because you will, either it's just sort of battle on the other part, you will lose. And students, when they lose face, you cannot expect their reaction at all. Even the mind, I would say, the best hardworking ones. It's a question of self-esteem. And preserve your classroom momentum. Never argue with the students in front of the class. Designed to argue the issue and offer discussion in a private way. Avoid punishing the whole class for one student's behavior. Okay, now you're going to all of this, sir, what's wrong have we done? No, all of you. Now it's the sort of, exam, the test, sort of the ineffective, I would say. And for the effective teacher, they know how to deal with this. And these are actually, it's not mine. These are the practices of the effective teachers around Morocco and in the world. Common paradigm. Finally, whenever possible, reprimand privately. Avoid giving your perpetrator an audience. Remember, when they lose face, they can look for the audience and you should the consequences. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, our Professor Fadoli Riz from Shuaib Bakari University. We would like to thank you for your insightful, fruitful presentation about classroom management strategies that teachers successfully use to lead students to the on task and engage in lessons. Now, before we move to our last sessions about comments and discussions, I would like to thank our distinguished speakers on the behalf of every member here and online, on the behalf of the organizing committee of Kazakhstan's team branch, on the behalf of the team branch national board. And before we move to the session of discussion, comments, I'd like to draw your attention that Oxford University Press is our partner and sponsor for this event, with the presence of our partner, Rashid Asfa.
Thank you. What should I say? The valuable contribution of our savvy university teachers that we have here. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you for making this event very successful. I just would like to correct something. So I represent today, I represent two things. So I'm a member of the association. So here I'm just like the other teachers, learning from our savvy teachers. And I represent Khirriya Nacional, which is one of the leading companies in publishing and distribution. So we are looking for cooperation. And Oxford University Press, we mentioned it because we represent Oxford University Press here in Morocco, and we care for education, and we become a stakeholder to the Ministry of Education and to you as well. So thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure to be with you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Rashid. Now we will open the session of questions and discussions, and I will take people and attendees who are going to share with us their points of view regarding these study dates, title, and team. Yes, please. Number one. Number one. Yes, Ya Aziz. Just, I would like first to take, I would like to face numbers first and names. Then we will give you the floor according to half hour we still have. Yes, who's going to start first? Yes, Ya Aziz. So we have Aziz, Nash. Yes, please. So the questions are devoted to our three speakers. Any comments, questions? Yes, someone? Yes, your name, please. Hassan Lutfi. Hassan Lutfi. Number three. Yes, your name, please.
Sufyan Amzak.
Sufyan
Amzak.
Amzak. Yes, number four. Who is going to represent females? Now we have three males. Ladies first. Yes, please, number four. Hisham.
Yes.
Yes, you read this? So please, for the attendees who have questions or comments, please can you join us? Can you join us? We will start with Si Aziz bin Najab. Would you please join us, Si Aziz? Si Aziz, the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself, your directorate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dina. My name is Aziz Amdej. Teaching is learning. Obviously, it's Bashir Provincial Directorate. I've been teaching for 5 years, as if I just started yesterday. It's been very fast, and thanks to CPD opportunities. Of course, each time we go to a seminar, training, lots of things change, especially in perspective, and this is something that is great. I would like to thank the organizing committee, thank professors. I always attend their workshops and conferences. So my first intervention will be will touch on the intervention of Mr. Ya'u and Mr. Yusuf. We're talking about all the time updating ourselves as teachers and learning new things, especially that we are dealing with digital native students. And of course, COVID-19 was an opportunity for us to really see whether we are coping with the changes. Students are nowadays using social media. They are really good at doing, at these things with technology. So once COVID-19 landed in Morocco, we were obliged to shift to online learning and teaching. The teachers who were all the time attending conferences and were attending CPD opportunities, and they really tried to learn about how to use technology in national, were really successful. And there was one of these teachers, I really knew how to edit videos and of course to do the light room things and so on and so forth, and I didn't have a problem with that. While other teachers were really lagging behind, and this is what Mr. Yusuf talked about, and also Mr. Ya'u talked about, is that we have to always keep ourselves updated and learn new things, especially when it comes to technology. The second thing that I would like to talk about is related to Mr. Fadoli's intervention about classroom management. I would like you, I want to really, well, you talked a lot about how to cope with disruptive behavior. All the strategies were great, but something that we don't really talk about is giving instruction. Giving instruction is very important, and we all the time remember that we, for example, attended a conference or we were in class, and the teacher or the presenter asked questions or said that we should do something, and you think that you understood. You think that you are the only one who didn't understand. What are you supposed to do? And you turn to the next person and you talk to them. So once you do that, this for the teacher is some kind of disruptive behavior. you are off task, and this might create disruptive behavior in classrooms, and teachers might deal with that in a very negative way, which will escalate to certain behaviors on the part of the student or the teacher. So instruction given is of pivotal role in teaching and learning. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Si Hassan Lutfi, could you please join us?
Morning, everyone. Thanks, dear presenters, for shedding light in different areas in the field of language teaching and language learning. Precisely with the COVID. My name is Hassan Lutfi. I'm a trainee teacher in the Sheriff Netherlands. So it's glad to attend this great meeting. Shedding light, as I said, on different areas in the field of language teaching and language learning. Precisely with the COVID-19 period, knowing that it has affected very greatly the learning and teaching process. So I'm very, I benefit a lot in the three presentations, and the question that I want to highlight is a link between what the professor presented about the attitude and what the professor Mohamed mentioned, working on developing learning autonomous. So how can I like develop learning autonomous in e-learning? Because I think to work on the learning autonomous has to do with the attitude. For example, we are working on the online teaching or remote teaching. Definitely I can like support or develop autonomous learning through changing the attitude of the students. So how can I change the attitude of the students to like the English language, and that way learner would depend on himself or herself. So this is the question that I want to like as a gap in the field of teaching. Like for example, I want to work on this area as an action research on changing the attitude of students. As or thanks to your hands-on experience, how would you change the attitude of students?
Thank you very much, Hassan Lutfi. But please, I would like you to be crystal clear. Are you addressing Professor bin Yusuf or Professor Mohamed?
I think for like all the expertise, like because it's not only directed to their professor or this, like it's a link between attitude and the autonomous or the like being autonomous learning.
Thank you very much, Si Hassan. Now we will give the floor to Mr. Sufyan Hamad. The floor is yours, Sufyan.
You mispronounced, but it's okay.
Yeah, when you come, you repronounce yourself. And I'm terribly sorry.
No, it's okay. I think that a lot.
And that?
You just made it worse. You made it worse. You made it worse.
I do apologize twice. I'm in tech.
First, I would like to thank everyone here. First, to extend my thanks to the distinguished participants, for Professor Yusuf, Professor Raoul, Professor Ali, and of course our Professor Skitchui. Is there Skitchui? Teacher Skitchui. Okay. I wanted to respond, but I guess I just missed that.
Thank you very much.
Second. So my first question is directed to Professor Yusuf. I think I found your presentation quite interesting, quite informative, and also quite motivating. Actually, I came here to get a lot of motivation, and I think in your presentation, I really, I felt really motivated. I'm thankful that I actually attended this event. I also wish to thank the other professors for their formal presentations and for their experience and for their sharing with us some of the skills in order to become better teachers and to invest on development. So my first question is directly to Mr. Yusuf. Yusuf or Yusuf? See?
That's really good, Yusuf.
So I didn't mispronounce it.
Yeah. You're right, yeah.
Okay. So the first question is about agility, and thank you so much, Mr. Stitchley, because you highlighted the word agility. Thank you for that. Can you please elaborate on that? How can we as teachers become agile English teachers, high school English teachers? I think I found this word very pertinent to our teaching profession, and I think that if we could somehow master the word agility to become agile English teachers, I think that would give us a boost on how to become great teachers of English in Morocco. The second question is directed to So, this is the question is directed to you. I think I found your position quite interesting because the topic of classroom management is at the heart of English teaching. Because you may be a great teacher, you may be an excellent teacher, you may be have quite understanding of the school subject English. But if you cannot know, if you cannot manage your classroom, then you're not actually helping or benefiting the students, right? So I think if we could, because in my first, this is actually my 5th year of teaching English. My first year, I struggled a lot. Yeah. I was good at English. I was excellent in university. But I found a lot of problems on how to approach students and how to impart the student. So the question is, can we please give us some motivation how to become a better manager? Because I think we've all seen the tips that you gave us. But can you give us a glimpse of hope that we can actually become good managers of English? Because I think this is not just me. I feel like all of us teachers, we've tried a lot of skills, a lot of strategies to manage the class in the perfect way we can. But sometimes we just feel powerless.
So do you mean magical strategies? Do you mean magical strategies?
Practical, I would say. Practical strategies.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and also I would like to, I'm sorry, I would just like to because I think you talked about how, for example, if we give students rules and the students breaks it, what are some of the punishments that we can give them? And I have just one strategy that I personally use with my students.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Soufiane. Due to time constraints, time constraints, we would like to move to Si Hisham from El Jadida. Thank you very much.
So,
Hisham, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Selena. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Hisham Staifi from Intermedia Directorate. I work in Izmir. I'm a graduate of Shaykh Bukhari University. And I was one of Professor Yael, one of his students, and I always enjoyed your grammar lessons and also phonology classes. And it's really a pleasure to be here. And I also enjoyed your presentation today. And I have I want to share my experience, my experience during COVID. And I recently received a questionnaire, an open-ended questionnaire from one of the professors, one of my professors who works in Rabat, Professor Kara. She's doing research on related to the use of social media tools for teaching online during COVID-19 lockdown. And her questions helped me reflect on the experience and on the period that I spent. So I have chosen some 3 questions which have to do with my own evaluation, the tools that every teacher should have knowledge about, the challenges and the risks of using social media. So concerning my own experience, I believe it was very challenging experience, both on the personal level and professional level. It was challenging in terms of how to contact students first, since our administration did not talk about the support or the help of the administration or things like that. I think it was mentioned by one of the presenters. So our administration did not update us at first about anything related to what should be done, how to contact students. It also did not contact students or update them about anything. Personally, I took the initiative to contact students in an informal way and gather them and agree on specific times for online classes. It was not possible for common course level students, but for second year baccalaureate students, it was much easier because we had created a WhatsApp group and an LMS Edmodo, especially Edmodo at the beginning of the year, because I already used it since I have some knowledge. I claim that I have some knowledge about that. I used to assign students tasks to do at home on the platform, and WhatsApp was only for sharing information and inquiries. But the main challenge was in preparing lessons and make PowerPoint presentations. That was time consuming and stressful. Another challenge was having students interact. Many of them connected, but were not there. They were either just passively listening or only connected and not following, especially that they did not show their faces on the cam using Zoom or Teams. It was frustrating when assigning students tasks with a set deadline, but they did not submit, or when telling them about the session time, and only few connect, especially after I spent the whole morning, for example, or the day preparing for the session. So this is a reflection on my own experience concerning the tools that we teachers should have knowledge about. I think the main challenge for me, and I claim that I have some knowledge about using some of the tools. Yes, just 1 minute. But the main tools that teachers should have, Microsoft Office or Google Tools, learning management systems, they are a must, and connecting tools. Concerning the risks, I'm not going to talk about the challenges. I move to the risks of using social media. So the risks, to my knowledge, until now, social media tools are not legally approved to be used in schools, primary, secondary, and high school. Keeping record of teachers' face or data or students' face, talks, information, especially minors, can lead to legal issues if data is leaked. An example of the risks One of the teachers was ridiculed or mocked, and her story was spread on social media. Maybe she made a mistake explaining some French lessons and so on, and some audios were shared also on social media. Teachers doing things or sellers. I mean, while teaching, sellers of vegetables or things like that. And these are some of the risks. Anyway, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And that's it.
From Angelina Directorate. Now I would like to give the floor to Sia Bahiri.
So I would like first to thank our professor from the second university, from Saeed. I would like first to thank the late president, the team president, the local branch of Casablanca. And I would like also to thank everybody here for their contributions to make this work successful. And it was really great. You did a good job. So I have been teaching for 27 years, but these 2 late years have been completely different, as you know, because of, or maybe thanks to COVID. It's because of distance. So these 2 years is a new experience for me. And as we can, I am from the new immigrant teachers, the ones who were not familiar with the ICT. And we needed to do a lot of efforts to satisfy our students' needs. So our objective is always the same, is to reach the maximum of our students. But still, you forget about how to meet these teachers' needs. In some cases, you feel that you are not given so that or much time, for instance, to give you a chance to know how to use this, how to use the computer, how to use the online. So my aim is to think about these new immigrant teachers, is to provide them with tools how to make it easier for them to reach the maximum of the students. And this way, then, as we know that now that the challenge is to make English present in everywhere, in small cities, in countrysides, and everywhere. So it needs a lot of work to be from the part of our ministry. And thank you very much for.
Thank you very much, Sid Tahiri. Even if we are run out of time, we are forced to give few minutes to participants online, who is Kulthuma. Just because of gender equality, I feel obliged and I feel forced. This is what I have been taught by Stephen Yusuf all the time. Ladies first. Kulthuma?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Kulthuma. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is
Kulthuma. Go ahead, please. Do you have a question or a comment? But please first introduce yourself.
Okay. Great thanks to all the attendees. Special thanks to our professors Ben Yao Mr. Fodoli and Mr. Ben Youssef, and also the team Kazakhstan for making this event more successful. It was fruitful and meaningful. I benefit a lot of things from it. My question is, do you have any other seminars like this to attend in the coming day? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, dear Kultuma. We have another female. Yes, please, your name? Basma. So Basma, please, the floor is yours. Just again for gender equality.
Well, hello everyone. I'd like to thank first our three presenters for their rich presentations. Well, my name is Basma Saltanish. I'm a trainee teacher at SMF here in Casablanca. I'm also a graduate from Said University, and I had the chance to be a professorial student. And I'm also a master student. Well, my question is actually for Mr. Fodoli concerning management. I personally had the chance in practicum to meet a group of students, in which I would say two of them had some criminal records, and I personally didn't know how to deal with them. They were really low students, like most of the class, but these two students were like much concern to me. I didn't know how to deal with them. So that's my question, how to deal with students with a criminal record. And that's it.
Thank you very much, dear Yasmin. Please, Rahim, could you hurry up, because we have just to close the session, to give the floor to our distinguished speakers for their comments and feedback. Teacher Milud, we will give you the floor. How are you, Milud? We will. Can you hear me, Milud? He's muted. He's muted. Anyway, Similud, we will give you the floor. We will give you the floor after Ibrahim.
I can active. Hello. Don't know what's this.
Similud, can you just put off one device and use only one, either your phone or laptop?
Yes, I'm doing. Hello, Imam. خرج من هذا كاس محمد. Okay. So yes. Actually, hello. Do you hear me, Imam? Yes. So first of all, good morning. I am a teacher from Sidi Ibn Noor Directorate. I teach for like 9 years now. And I would like to thank you all for this informative study day. I learned a lot, especially from the first presentation. I learned a lot. So I have also some remarks to make and some questions to ask. So talking about online learning is a hot issue actually, especially in Morocco. So I expected today that we will learn something about how to assess our students based on online teaching. So this is one of the things that is absent, and I would like to find an answer to. Second, Mr. Yusuf talked about professional development, okay? And at the same time talked about technology failure in training. So we should change the way we train teachers, right? For me, as a remark, I think that we need to change everything. We need to change the way students look at the language and teachers teach the language. Because students, they study and they learn language for the exam. They want to get good marks. They don't want to communicate. So this is the biggest challenge that faces teachers. Well, so how can we change the way we test, the way we assess students, so and make language something that is lovable for them, for our students? Another idea is professional development. So how can we help teachers, to make progress in professional development while they have now technological tools at school? So there should be a kind of being realistic a little bit. So the teachers need to be armed with the tools so that they can practice and they can make an advancement in their professional development. So we need really, as a remark, and I would like that the decision makers who are listening, so we need a decision from the Ministry of Education to try to change things so that students will learn not for marks, but learn for acquiring language. So I can't see any points where students, they can use language while we are using textbook that dates back to 2006 or 2007. We are in 21st century. We are in 2021. So we need books that really mean something to students. So learning about language, language, we should use, yes. Yes, Imam.
Do you still have time, please?
Yes? Imam.
Just because of time, do you still have a question?
Yes. So the question is about assessment. So we tend to assess our students, for example, let's take the baccalaureate students as an example, and I wish that the professors answer this question. So students, we assess them in reading and in writing and grammar. But what about the oral skills? We don't test them in the national exams. So students, they focus on structure. They don't focus on oral skills like speaking and listening. So one of the causes of the problem that face students and face teachers, because students focus more on structure. They don't focus on oral skills. So language for me is speaking and listening. So when we exclude these two skills from the exams and tests and assessments, then we are not saying to students to learn a language. We are saying to them to learn math. Okay, so this is my question. So how can we make an exam that really helps enhance language learning, not just getting marks? This is the main question I want to ask. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Seminu. Representative Stephen Nor, Directorate. Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to my colleague, Steve
to the training process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Now I'd like to give the floor to our speakers for their feedback and answer the question session. We can start with Mr. Professor Mohammed Yar.
First of all, I'm very happy to meet one of the 3 brightest students from Shahid Academy University, Aziz Ghanaj, and also Hisham has left. These are one of the brightest students, and I still keep track. You know, for example, Aziz Ghanaj is very active teacher now. He's always frequently completing teacher development courses, and he's very active in organizing student clubs in his school, even organizing now V-Talks and being sometimes a host in radio shows, etc. I'm very proud.
Maybe CEO is preparing for elections.
I see a bright future for Aziz Ghanaj. Wait for 5 years and make it. He deserves. And I am very happy also to meet Hisham. Hisham is a doctoral student in Rabat with Professor Berat. We would love to have him in Shahid Academy University, but he left. We were a bit disappointed. Okay, so questions that were asked concerning an important aspect was about e-safety, electronic safety. Whenever possible, never always use a professional email address. I don't know whether this is possible in your institution, but at the level of the university, we have the AC.MA email account. This is possible, I think, within the academy to have professional emails. So whenever possible, have this, connect with your students using this professional email address. The same thing, if you are using Facebook, do not, of course, use your personal Facebook page, but set up a professional web page, a group that is, it has the name of your class. And of course, do not share your personal photos, etc. Keep this as professional as possible. The same thing, if you're using WhatsApp, if it is possible to have 2 numbers, phone numbers, and have a group, also a group where you can be the administrator and maybe only not allow students to, but that's again, it's not convenient. But try to find ways how you can keep things safe. Concerning the problem or the question of autonomy, enhancing or developing learner autonomy was not related only to autonomy on using online learning, but this is something that you know about, developing learner autonomy in general. This is should be thought of as a process to be learned, not just a fixed state. This is a responsibility for us all as educators to enhance this skill, because this is a very important skill that we would like to boost, because this is important for the transition from middle school to high school, from high school to university. And of course, this is a responsibility of us as educators to adopt a learner learner-centered approach. If you adopt a learner-centered approach, I'm sure that you will develop flexible tasks and whenever possible, give your students opportunities to take control of their learning and not just wait for you to spoon feed them. But this, learner autonomy should be the theme of the study day in itself. Now, I'd like to move to online assessment. I will talk about my experience with online assessment as I gave an online class at the School of Education, NSF, in Al Jadida. Now, this is an example of an institution with a limited access, where students, of course, enter. They have to sit for an entrance exam, and we had 20 students in semester 3, 12 students in semester 1. The students, attended online classes using Microsoft Teams, and we had virtual classrooms, and the attendance was 100% because it's not an open access institution like I talked about earlier with the School of Letters. So for this, the exam was done. This is how we did. For example, we assessed writing, we assessed grammar, writing, and speaking. But we set the time. There were certain conditions. For example, students had to put their camera on. The teacher also put his camera on, or her camera on, and we monitored this on a screen. If ever they switch off the camera, that's like a form of cheating. So camera on, and the timer, if the exam was 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, we allow 5 minutes only for late submission. 5 minutes, that's the maximum we can allow. For the assessment of speaking, we did not ask them to prepare. So we opted for impromptu speech. 3 minutes. 3 minutes, we assign the theme on site. This is not allowing cheating. The same thing for writing and grammar. Of course, writing, again, we allowed, either submission was using the Microsoft Word file, Google form, or we also accepted a screenshot of the handwritten. Yes. So this, we were very flexible, and this is for the continual assessment. As for the final exam, interesting is that we gave them two options. That is, for example, writing exam or grammar, we have two options. The exam covered sections or elements that we did face-to-face, and another part covered all the class that we did face-to-face, because we covered, I think, 5 weeks. The 5 weeks were being taught face-to-face, and the remainder was online. So there are those students who opted for things that we did online and face-to-face, and there are students who opted only for classes that were done face-to-face. Now, 80% opted for face-to-face only. It means that they were not, they were not confident enough to answer questions, which was very, for me personally, I was very disappointed, because we have done great efforts in order to, as you have seen, YouTube and Knowledge platform, in order to teach as much as possible and provide materials, PDF materials, PowerPoint presentations, and teaching online. I think these are the questions that were asked with regard to my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mohammed Jao. Now I will give the floor to Professor Mr. Munir Youssef. Professor Youssef, Munir.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go back to the notion of agility and maybe emphasize a little further its importance, its vital role in self-development. Now, in the absence of a scheme developed by a central institution, maybe the ministry or the directorate, etc., we need to learn the lesson that was given by such business structures as Google, Amazon, Uber, TikTok. Who here doesn't remember how big Nokia was maybe 10, 15 years ago? 10, 15 years ago, everybody had a Nokia telephone in their pockets, and everybody remembers Nokia connecting people. Where is Nokia today in comparison with Xiaomi, with Samsung, etc.? The reason why there is this huge revolution today is their ability to adapt swiftly. So these organizations are huge, but at the same time, they are swift in their adaptability. That's what I think what we need as teachers, especially teachers of English, because we are in a position which is to our advantage. We possess a language that allows to be informed swiftly. We are informed before anybody else because we possess the medium, and we can be trained also more swiftly than anybody else. And we can also join training and research structures more swiftly. So let's take advantage of this. This is why I insist on not missing the bus or not missing the boat. And that's why we shouldn't be we should develop self-incentive. And this is why my recommendation to team as an association is maybe to play the role of creating a restricted or at least a small network in order to encourage career development, in order to encourage and to enhance adaptability and career development. Autonomy is the key word also. If you don't have autonomy, you will always depend on institutional schemes. Now, why waiting for the institutional schemes to develop? And the difficulty comes from the fact that they are heavyweight. It's difficult for a whole ministry, for example, to react. We see the example of the COVID crisis. It took time for the institutions to react, while teachers in Sidi Noor and in Dakhla and in Birkan, teachers react individually. And that's what I mean by agility. That kind of agility is something that we need to spread. It has to become contagious to allow each one of us to develop their career. And this development, I think it's beneficial for everyone, that your career development becomes something constant. Every morning, gentlemen, when you shave, you think, how far are you from the first day that you started teaching? And ladies, before you put on your scarf or before you comb your hair, you think, am I the same today as I was yesterday? Otherwise, if you depend on institutions, sometimes you're going to wait a long time. And for this, I insist, training, research, and networking. Networking can be maybe done through such institutions as an association. Research, always make sure that you are affiliated to a university, either locally or internationally. And training can sometimes be made available by institutions that have a commercial purpose. But why not? If we find common ground for development, that would be beneficial to everyone. If you feel that the university can do something for you, my advice is to join online network. For example, I believe that every teacher should, if you're on Facebook or on TikTok or on Instagram, that's a good thing. But I feel it's more important to have a profile on LinkedIn because it's a professional network, and through LinkedIn you can create international links. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simone Yusuf. Hisham, Professor Mohammed Yaoub is asking for you.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was on the phone.
I just really said how proud I am. And also I forgot the lady, I forgot your name. Huh? Basma. Yes, Basma was very proud. And also she left the university without joining any graduate program. In India, yes.
Good luck, Hisham. Good luck, Basma. Good luck, everyone. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Professor Fadouli, please, to give his feedback about the attendees' comments. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Stephen, thank you so much once again. A number of questions, of course. I'll start with Teacher Aziz. Thank you for the question. If I got your point straight enough, you talked about giving instructions. Interesting. You suggested it could have been part of my presentation. Interesting, why not? And maybe it is theoretically related to the management of learning. The matching, trying to meet up students' needs. Remember the kind of like setting up objectives, give you feedback, etc. But if we were talking about maybe the for instance, how you teach, the practical steps, how you teach, for instance, reading comprehension, going through those kind of stages, or pre, while, and post reading, follow up, etc. That is interesting. But the fact that teachers actually, they, due to time constraint, they tend to, I would say, skip some of these stages, having to deal with other parts of the textbook. But yeah, interesting. And one thing more, the sort of management, the idea here, when I opted for as a title, management of learning, was just for the sake of keeping the checklist. Like whenever you have to come into your classroom, you need to, of course, this is prior, related to preparation of your lessons, lesson plan, etc. All the kind of elements recommendable before you come to class. And when you come into your classroom, of course, try as much as possible, you strive as much as possible to see those kind of checklists achievable or not. And of course, you work for that. Another question is on maybe teacher Lotfi talks about the sort of learner autonomy, how we cater for the sort of autonomous learners, students, etc. Perhaps one idea I could suggest, and this is of course related to more research studies now revolving about this concept of driving your students to be highly autonomous enough. You could tap on these sorts of social media wonders, I would say. Like, I would recommend a book, I cannot recall the author. It's Shrek as a curriculum. I highly recommend this sort of book, Shrek as curriculum. The idea behind this actually is that since you have now digital native students, you need to capitalize on this fact. Compared to old generations, the sort of fear they, and this is teacher Tarek has brought about this idea. Old generations, this sort of, I would say, fear not to get into this stuff. But I suggest that you capitalize on social media networks, specifically Facebook. Why not? you try as much as possible. This may sound a bit wide, but yeah, for sure. Try as much as possible to insert those kind of memes, trolls. I've inserted this one at the beginning, remember the presentation? Why not? Try to insert, because you will actually guarantee the motivation of your students, those kind of adolescents, and try to strike a balance, how you can incorporate those kind of themes, maybe in a sort of speaking activity, writing activity, guided writing activity, why not? And the list goes on. It's up to you, teachers. I know you are highly motivated, trying to do your best at most for the sake of students, and you're doing a great job. And of course, it pays off. You need only to, from time to time, look around you in certain those kind of social networks, as I told you. Another one, another question by, yes, Kantuma. Sorry, Basma. Criminal, yes, is it criminal records? You've been, I would say, facing it up with some criminal records since. Well, honestly, I've been teaching for 15 years, you know, starting from primary up to higher education. Honestly, that's a gray area. What I can only suggest that you go the soft way. You do your best, try to motivate those kinds, because in the end, those kind of criminal, as you characterize them, criminal records, they're looking for a sort of validation of their needs. Maybe they're having some sort of, I would say, psychological, you know, issues going on. But try to tap on their, I would say, those kind of innate self-image they have, and they would like to project, because most of the time they try to, they from time to time instigate those kind of travels to bring attention to them. You can go the soft way, motivational discourse in a way, being assertive, of course, and of course, the part of the, I would say, school administration is very important, because this is a complicated issue. It's not just purely related to you as a teacher. And one more thing is that you do not get discouraged at all. Do not, you know, you reflect that kind of, I would say, negative talk as a teacher. I could not manage this. No, keep up the good work, keep up this kind of psychological, I would say, signals, trying to, one way or the other, bring them in to be more in your teaching, your talk, inclusive. And of course, at the same time, being assertive enough, like when you have to first, this is just one idea. Initially, the spot of they come into class, you have to check their homework. And of course, it's not just the sort of battle physical one, but yeah, being assertive, maybe they have to fill in a form for you. It's this sort of, many times how often they miss their homework. And yeah, it's a regular, but finally, there is no, I would say, golden rule you can deal with this sort of, because students, they vary their kind of, you know, this personality, teachers vary. It's part of it, teacher's role, but the school, I would say, culture in there, because sometimes you can find, I would say, schools which they project, they serve as this kind of control, discipline, having the role of the headmaster, all the kind of stuff out there, personnel. And of course, they make it helpful for the teachers. But in other times, you just get into some kind of schools, you find it completely out of I would say, order, starting from the person who won in school being absent. Students, they know already that this, okay, all the time, and even if they are recommended in a way to the head office, they know that there is nothing to be taken against them as a sort of punishment. But yeah, it's do your part, and I would finally suggest, as I told you a couple of minutes ago, go the soft way. Perhaps my word. Another question, it's, no, maybe. Yeah, teacher Katsuma has, she suggested that whether we would like, whether we were going to set up, I would say, some events coming up. I hope we can, I'm open to invitations, of course, on my part personally. I feel the obligation to share, exchange with teachers, practitioners, and we actually learn from teachers on the ground because as Professor Yayo and Professor Yusuf stated, we are one community. And I think it's all for questions. I hope I can you remind me, please, because I have
can I interview? Excuse me, can I just come again? No, not a question.
I asked me to repeat.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, yes.
Okay.
Remind me, please.
By the way, I haven't introduced myself, the directorate, so I teach in Duna, so I represent the Duna directorate. So my question was, can you please enlighten us? Can you please enlighten us with a personal, motivating management story, right? Yeah. Maybe if you could tap into your personal, professional, and personal story regarding classic management. Maybe something you've experienced before, because we want to see that. We want to see like change. I was here.
And now I recall your question, but it's not just, I wouldn't claim it as a model how to deal with it. It's a personal part of personal experience dealing with different kinds of students. It's all the time, as I told you, be assertive in the first, you try to capitalize on those first days, moments, and I would say months of your teaching. And believe me, it's a kind of domino effect. It will work for you for your whole career. Try it. I would say, once you establish your image in the school as a assertive teacher, highly motivated one, I would say disciplinary bound teacher, believe me, it will work for you. But I'm sure all of us at a certain time, you have to suffer for the first year, second year, third year, maybe for the fourth year, you would find, I would say, some, I wouldn't call it bag of tricks to deal with students, but it's your personality. Remember this in the classroom, not the, I would say it's the professional personality, if this phrase is actually acceptable by the community scholars. So first thing, rules and routines all the time. You have, for me, I was in a way, I was all the time trying to set 3 basic rules, and I used to, like in the Arabic, that is just say this is it means that I'm not going at all to do some sort of compromise. Never. You overstep this kind of 3 rules, you're, I would say, you're eliminated in a way. And of course, I used to make sure, and this is to teach this kind of rules, routines, model them, and make sure to every time constantly try to make sure that the students would apply. The first thing that my students would when they would come, I would ask for their homework. I check every their copybooks for the yesterday's, last time's, and I would just, it's not just a bad physical one, I would just have a list. Yes, okay. The first time, and it works actually. You may go for this intimidation mode, and it works. It's not just that you have. And of course, when needs be, you need to be affirmative and assertive. You need to, because remember I told you, some students will test you anyway, and you have to be. It's like wouldn't call it battleground, but I wouldn't call it you look for the scapegoat. But of course, you need to take a stand, and it's once for more. I hope I have already suggested for you some tips, but it's up to you. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Fadoli. Thank you very much, all our distinguished. In fact, our study day comes to its end, but because I am not an exception, Mr. Yusuf has just mentioned that something about, do you know someone who knows and because I know someone who is here, who is my colleague and friend, I'm going to give him just 1 minute, even if it's out of the law. So Munir, please, could you be very brief?
So I'm Munir Hanani from Director of Executive. Okay, so I want to thank our professor for this presentation. I want to seize the opportunity to thank team for this opportunity for this study day. And then I want to thank Mr. Munir bin Youssef for learning from him as an ex-student in the university and now from his presentation. I want just to, because Mr. bin Youssef emphasized on the word networking, and it's really a fact that we have to get linked to those associations. I have just a question. So since we are on the word of networking, so what is the job of the Ministry of Education in doing in parallel with those associations? Because most of the study days and the trainings that I have been in were just organized by many associations. And we find only the logo of the ministry or the academy only sponsoring this study day. But don't you think that because of the constraints that many of the teachers encountered in the previous academic year, I don't see teachers integrated in this problem of COVID, because I've always wondered, I've been wondering the whole year why the ministry can't assign a questionnaire, for example, for teachers, knowing what are the constraints that they had encountered last year, and trying to make some making a team to study these things, because we are teachers and we are the main core of this problem. So we should be centralized from it, because we know the constraints, we know the problems that we have encountered, and also the students the problems that the student encountered. So the ministry should give us the floor to know what are the problems, so that they study these problems and to find solutions. Because as most of the teachers know, we have been waiting till the first week of May to know what are the lessons that they are assigned for the national exam. So the Ministry of Education should have learned from what's happened last year and making some program before waiting for the first week, and still having just 3 weeks before the national exam. You know, these are the lessons. So instead of waiting for May to sign the lessons, we should have studied that before and telling us what are the lessons that should have been studied and for the national exam, so that we can know how to teach this program and how to make our students prepared for the national exam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Munir. Thank you very much, all the participants, all the speakers, all the attendees, without whom these events would have never seen the light, without whom these events would not be a success. وكما فتحنا اللقاء باللغة العربية سنختتمه باللغة العربية. غادي نعطيو كلمة مقتضبة للأساتذة المحترمين اللي جاوا وشاركونا هذا اليوم الدراسي. يوم سبت، يوم عطلة، يوم الأبناء، لكن أساتذة من طينة الأستاذ محمد بن يعقوب، الأستاذ منير بن يوسف، الأستاذ فاضل إدريس، أبوا إلا أن يشاركونا هذا الحفل التربوي. وهذا إن دل على شيء فإنما يدل على حبهم لهذا الوطن العزيز ولغيرتهم على منظومة التربية والتشويه في بلدنا الحبيب، فلنصفق لهم.
كلمة ختامية قلتها. المهم هو الجامع كنتمنى أن يكون الرسالة الصوتية ديال إلا خلقنا واحد الشبكة وتكون متماسكة الأجزاء غادي يمكننا نتقدموا للأمام. إلا بقينا نفرقوا كل واحد خدام في البيت ديالو وحده، لأن الصعوبة اللي تبدات عندنا الوضعية ديال كوفيد هي ديال أنه كاين الأساتذة اللي تبارك الله الشباب اليوم متمرنين على الآليات ديال الإي-ليرنينغ وعلى الفيديو وعلى السوشيال ميديا، ولكن كاين الناس اخرين اللي بحالنا حنا في وسط لاكارير ولا في النهايه ديال لاكارير، الناس ما بقاش عنده الجهد باش عاوتاني يتاقلم مع الجو الجديد. الحل الوحيد هو الخدمه في اطار واحد الشبكه اللي كنديروا النيتوركينغ، اللي كيعرف كيوري هذاك اللي ما كيعرفش، واللي كيتخصص. وحاجه اخرى مهمه بالنسبه للدرس اللي تعلمناه في الاي-ليرنينغ، نقول لكم الاستاذ يعقوب كانت التجربه الاولى ديالنا مع مودل في 2006. اول مره كانت كندا تبرعت علينا بلا فيرسيون غراتويت ديال مودل، ودرنا واحد التجربه ديال الخطا الاول اللي درناه هو كان كيتحملنا بانه غنحطوا واحد التكست وغنديروه مودل وراه ولا اي-ليرنينغ. من بعد تعلمنا بان اي-ليرنينغ راه فيه بالعاد ديال المسائل بحال درتي كسكسو فيه غير الاولى بوحدها ما فيه لا الحمله خضراء. ومن بعد كتعلم بان راه كاين ديال جوج خضاري وديال سبع خضاري وديال الحمله ديال كتولي هذاك البلاندين مهم. هنا علاش كل ما تقلتي الهيكله اللي كتنتمي لها كل ما كتصعب الامور. agility paradigm, yes, creating a specific pattern, creating a pattern that has essential components, but keep it easy going, keep it simple, keep it easy to adapt to every new situation. Thank you very much.
الدكتورة منيرة بن يوسف ممثل جامعة الحسن الثانية. أعطي الكلمة السيد الدكتور البروفيسور سيدي محمد يعقوب من جامعة شعيب الثاني. فليتفضل مشكورا.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to reiterate my thanks, and I'm open and I would accept an invitation to participate in any study day. And also, I would like to focus on the fact that we need to boost our efforts to try to unify the efforts to participate in NGOs and associations and try to establish communities of practice. Communities of practice that have the same goal. So teams, yes, mate, any other association. We have started experience with an association for teachers of English at higher education level, but it didn't work. So it was called MINE, Moroccan Inter-University Network of English. But we hope to have associations like these where we can share best practices and organize studies. Thank you very much.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور الاستاذ محمد بن يعقوب. الان كلمه الاستاذ الدكتور ادريس. كلمه ختاميه.
Is it in Arabic or?
As you like. Feel free.
I would follow suit too. Thank you so much for your presence. It's been really an interesting day, and I would reiterate to my thanks to the Regional Academy of Education. I would thank also the teams, members of local branch, Casablanca staff, all the members, the organizing committee, and all the members. Thank you so much. And of course, on my part, I would all the time say I would welcome all the invitations to participate of course, be enlightened and be enlightened by teachers, exchanges, teachers, interventions. And I hope we can keep up the good work, and I hope we can all the time get in touch and contact, of course, like Professor Yeo has suggested, setting up more professional communities, having to open up onto and for all the kind of institutions, primary schools, middle schools, high schools, and even higher schools, trying at the same time to find out as many linkages as possible between, because as we all stated before, it's one community, and of course, it's only when you share, it means that you care. So sharing, caring, and it's one community. And thank you so much once more.
Thank you very much, Dr. Professor Fadlouli Idrissi, Fadlouli Idriss. Before I give the floor to Mr. Wazir, I would like to announce to the attendees that the lunch is going to be in group Scholar Misbah in honor of your attendance. Please don't leave it before taking lunch with us together. الكلمة الختامية للسيد محمد بدوز سوى بدوز رئيس قسم الشؤون التربوية بالأكاديمية الجهوية للتربية والتكوين لجهة الدار البيضاء سقط، نيابة عن السيد مدير الأكاديمية الجهوية للتربية والتكوين لجهة الدار البيضاء سقط، فليتفضل مشكورا.
Thank you very much. It's an interesting day. I'm very happy to be with you. I think that it is very important to be together, to share, about studies, about our future, our establishment. Thank you. ونحن على مشارف كحنا في البقرة نريد أول الأساس أنهم يعاونوا ولا ماشي يعاونوا مرات يقوموا بهذا وبريباري لي زيليف ديريكتومون البقرة. تعرفوا الوليدات بسبب هذا الكورونا نورمالمون مهما حاولنا ما غاديش يعوض التعليم عن بعد والتعليم الذاتي التعليم الكلي. هذه دعوة باش تفوق من الدعم التربوي للوليدات، وهذه الفترة تكون بالفعل. هذه الوليدات يتسناو حتى آخر لحظة ويبداو يبريباريو. كل أستاذ يخدم على التلاميذ ديالو هذه الفترة الواجبة ممكن يحكم لها. حنا دائما في الدراسة تنطلعوا أننا نكونوا أولا الصعيد هو الأصل. دونك هذه دعوة لكم باش تعاونوا في التحدي اللي بغينا هو أننا نوصلوا نسبة نجاح 100%. هي خيالية ولكن مع تدابر الجهود ممكن نمشيو ليه. على الأقل نظنوا بخير الأساتذة اللغة الإنجليزية، لأن عارف بأن الوليدات في لاج ديال المراهقة تهتموا بها بزاف. هذه من جهة، من جهة أخرى أنا تنشوف بأن لونغلي لي لونغ إترونجير ما يمكنش نتعلموهم بلا كوميونيكاسيون، بلا يعني لقاءات تجمع الأساتذة كيشونجيو وهذا. كاين هذا التجربة ديال لي كلاس فيرتويال وفي علاقتهم مع دول أجنبية. كاين ستيفن انيسياتيف، كاين البروغرام اللي
très intéressant. كاين بزاف تجارب في لونغ لابروتيساج بار لو شون كاين بزاف ديال لي بروغرام. انا تنبعوا الاساتذه انهم ينخرطوا يجيبوا لنا لي بروغرام، اي بروغرام شفتوه بانه يفيد الوليدات. حنا في الاكاديميه الاستاذه رانا ان شاء الله السيده حيبوب اللي تاخذ قلبها تاخذ قلبها هذه الوصيه لانها تقيس الوليدات. اي حاجه تقيس الوليدات تقيس تعليمات الوليدات وصالح المديريات مرحبا بها. الاكاديميه مفتوحه خاصكم تنتبهوا لها، مفتوحه في وجهكم. احنا غادي نشتغلوا مع الجمعيات الجمعيه الشركه ديالنا على اساس تطوير هذا ونديروا ان بروغرام اللي انوفون شارجي باش نوصلوا الاساتذه كلهم على الصعيد الجهه من اجل الوصول للتلاميذ، لان الهدف ديالنا دائما هو التلاميذ. وشكرا على تحملكم على التنقل، وشكرا للاساتذه المصدرين اللي عطاونا الوصول الثمين، وشكرا للساده والسيد رئيس الجمعيه، والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.
إذا الشكر جزيلا الشكر للسيدة معزة دوز رئيس قسم الشؤون التربوية في الأكاديمية الجهوية للتربية والتكوين لجهة الدار البيضاء ستات. كما قال الأستاذ هذه فرصة نستغلوها. عندنا 16 ممثل ل 16 جهة، فهما اللي إن شاء الله غادي يقوموا بهذا الدور أنهم يبلغوا هذه الرسالة للزميلات والزملاء ديالهم إن شاء الله. قبل توزيع الشواهد التقديريه والتذكارات على الاساتذه المشاركين، الاستاذه امينه بياز على ما اظن من المحمديه عندها كلمه، لانها اخذت العناء ديال الطريق وهذا غادي نعطيوها الكلمه.
Just I wrote little words for thanking you for this fruitful presentation. So I will very quickly. We are kindly privileged to be among such successful and rich professors like you in this very fruitful ceremonial seminar that includes this little motivational and inspirational oral presentations on this spring sunny weekend. Thank you so much.
إذا الآن حان وقت توزيع التذكارات والشواهد التقديرية على الأساتذة الفضلاء. فليتقدم السيد معزة دوز رئيس قسم الشؤون التربوية بأكاديمية الجهوية للتربية والتكوين لجهة الدار البيضاء سطات، والأستاذة حنان جبران رئيسة جمعية أساتذة اللغة الإنجليزية بالمغرب فرع جهة الدار البيضاء سطات لتقديم التذكار والشهادة التقديرية للأستاذ محمد يعقوب من جامعة شعيب الكريم، فليتفضل مشكورا. الآن ندعو على الأستاذ تفضلي دريس وغتقدم له التذكار والشهاده التقديريه الاستاذه المتالقه لاله امينه حيبوب والاستاذ بوعزه فليتفضل مشكورا. الأستاذة حنان شبران لتقديم الجائزة والتذكار للأستاذ منير بن يوسف. وتقدم السيدة حنان جبران رئيسة فرع جهة دار البيضاء سقط لجمعية أساتذة اللغة الإنجليزية بالمغرب تذكارا للسيد مدير أكاديمية الجهوية للتربية والتكوين لجهة الدار البيضاء سقط ينوب عنه السيد بوعزة الدوزر رئيس قسم الشؤون التربوية بالأكاديمية الجهوية للتربية والتكوين لجهة الدار البيضاء سقط. غادي نناديو على مجموعه من السيدات والاستاذات والساده الاساتذه الحضور لتسلم الشواهد التقديريه. ندعو على الأستاذة خديجة متروك. أستاذ عبد الطاهري. أستاذة كلثومة حنين. أستاذة ملكة جبري. أستاذة ملكة جبري. أستاذة أمينة بياس. أستاذة حنان كثير. أستاذ محمد يعقوب. أستاذ محمد يعقوب في تقديم الشواهد التقديرية.
Yes. Kajabri. Sula.
الأستاذ منير أماني، الأستاذ عزيز بناش، الأستاذة رجاء السقا، الأستاذ خيات هدى، الأستاذة خيات هدى نذير، الأستاذ صيري عبد الرحيم. يقدم الجائزة الشهادة التقديرية الأستاذ فضولي إدريس. تقدم الأستاذة حنان جبران، أستاذ أم إبراهيم، أستاذ جلالي، أستاذ جلالي، أستاذة رشيدة، أستاذة حريات محمد، أستاذة مروى نائب، أستاذ حسين أقشار، أستاذ لطفي حسن، أستاذ منتهى محمد. قدم لهم شواهد تقديرية الأستاذ منير بن يوسف. ندوي على السي العمري رئيس جمعية أساتذة اللغة الإنجليزية بالمغرب المكتب الوطني، قدم شواهد تقديرية الأساتذة هشام الصافي، محمد بنمكي، أسماء حلاوي، ذباح بلود، بسمة تاش، والأستاذ سفيان أمثال. ناديو على السيد معزة الدوز، الأستاذة أمينة حيبوب، الأستاذ رشيد أسفار ممثل ليبري ناسيونال الأستاذة حنان جبران رئيسة إطار جمعية تيم دار الأسقاط لتقديم الشواهد التقديرية للأستاذ للجنة المنظمة في شخص الأستاذ بصيري عبد الرحيم، الأستاذ فخري نبيل، الأستاذ بن رواء نور الدين، الأستاذ عبد الرحمن مولي، أستاذ عمران تفضل معنا. بالنسبة للحضور الكريم ما نسينا شي واحد. بالنسبة للحضور الكريم all participants ما نسينا شي واحد. لا. ندعو الأستاذة أمينة والأستاذة معزة لتقديم شهادة تقديرية للجمعية المغربية لأساتذة اللغة الإنجليزية في شخص الأستاذ العمري عن المكتب الوطني. Then last but not least أخيرا وليس آخرا يتفضل معنا الأستاذ يوسف والأستاذ بيعو والأستاذ فضولي وكذا الأستاذ بدوز والأستاذة أمينة لتقديم شهادة تقديرية لرئيسة جمعية أساتذة اللغة الإنجليزية بالمغرب فرع شهادة دار البيضاء ستارت وشكرا.
Thank you.